Chapter 1980. To a certain extent, the dragon warriors were the spokespersons of the mystical dragons. To be more precise, he was the spokesperson of the divine dragon that gave him the ability to transform into a dragon. Seven-clawed dragon warriors were the representatives of the seven-clawed divine dragons. Eight-clawed dragon warriors were the representatives of the eight-clawed divine dragons. Nine-clawed dragon warriors were the representatives of the nine-clawed divine dragons. Duanling Tian is actually a nine-clawed dragon warrior. It seems like there was a nine-clawed divine dragon in the history of the Dao Martial Saint Land. That's right. To us, a nine-clawed divine dragon is a legendary existence. In the past, we weren't even sure if a nine-clawed divine dragon had ever appeared in the Dao Martial Saint Land. However, since Duanling Tian can transform into a nine-clawed dragon warrior, this proves that a nine-clawed divine dragon had once appeared in the Dao Martial Saint Land. Duanling Tian must have obtained the inheritance of the nine-clawed divine dragon. That's why he can transform into a nine-clawed dragon warrior. Duanling Tian's luck is really enviable. Everywhere in the four symbol sanctums of Zoroastrianism, the news that Duanling Tian was a nine-clawed dragon warrior was spread everywhere. This news was shocking. At the same time, they also vaguely realized, in the history of the Dao Martial Saint Land, there was once a nine-clawed divine dragon. Duanling Tian, on the other hand, had obtained the legacy left behind by the nine-clawed divine dragon. That was how he mastered the ability to transform into a nine-clawed dragon warrior. They couldn't think of any other possibility. Senior brother Hong Su was forced to his death by Duanling Tian. At the same time, the Black Turtle Sanctum, one of the four symbols sanctums, was not peaceful as well. Many people found it hard to accept the news that Hong Su had committed suicide in the face of pressure from Duanling Tian. These people were all Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples who idolized Hong Su, the great senior brother of the Black Turtle Sanctum. What did he mean by being forced to death by senior martial brother Duanling Tian? If Hong Su didn't want to kill senior martial brother Duanling Tian, would senior martial brother Duanling Tian force him? Ridiculous. There were also many Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples who knew what had happened. They stood on Duanling Tian's side and spoke up for Duanling Tian. Exactly. In order to kill senior brother Duanling Tian, Hong Su did not hesitate to consume a forbidden pill. What a big deal. It's a pity that he's no match for senior brother Duanling Tian even though he's taken a forbidden pill. Compared to those who defended Hong Su, there were undoubtedly more Black Tortoise Tower disciples on Duanling Tian's side. As the saying goes, the winner is the king and the loser is the bandit. In addition, Duanling Tian was in the right. Therefore, those who supported him naturally outnumbered those who supported Hong Su. To think that I treated Hong Su as my eldest senior brother? I didn't expect him to be so cruel to his fellow disciples. He didn't even hesitate to consume a forbidden pill to kill his fellow disciples. I was really blind before. Me too. In the past, I used to treat Hong Su as my idol. Now that I think about it, I feel disgusted. Why would I treat someone like that as my idol? There were also many Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples who originally respected Hong Su who had turned against him. Hong Su's actions had hurt their hearts. Naturally, there were also a few Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples who found it strange that Hong Su killed Duanling Tian. Logically speaking, both of them don't know each other at all. However, why would senior brother Hong Su kill Duanling Tian? Moreover, he did not hesitate to consume a forbidden pill. How deep is the enmity between them? If there's enmity between them, senior brother Hong Su would have made his move on Duanling Tian long ago. Why would he wait until Duanling Tian was banished to the four symbol sanctum's first mine before he chased after him? You're right. I feel like something strange about this matter. Do you still remember that Elder Lian came to the residence of our Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples 2 days ago to look for senior brother Hong Su? You mean senior brother Hong Su killed Duanling Tian under Elder Lian's orders? Shoo. Lower your voice. Are you seeking death? These Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples were smart. They knew Hong Su's pursuit of Duanling Tian to the four symbols sanctum's first mine to kill Duanling Tian had something to do with their Black Turtle Sanctum's first silver flame Elder Lian. After all, the enmity between Lian and Duanling Tian was not a secret in the Black Turtle Sanctum and the four symbols sanctums. However, even though they knew about it, they did not dare to spread it. If they were caught by Lian, they would be severely punished even if they did not die. They were not Duanling Tian, so they did not dare to go against Lian. While the Black Turtle Sanctum was in an uproar over the matter between Duanling Tian and Hong Su, the Black Turtle Sanctum's first silver flame elder, Lian, had just returned from outside. As soon as he returned, he received news from the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine before he could even warm his seat. The source of the news was the person he had planted in the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine. Useless trash. Lian cursed when he found out Hong Su had committed suicide and Duan Lingtian was safe and sound. Bang. Accompanied by a loud bang, the new stone table in the front yard of Lian's residence that had just been replaced was once again smashed into pieces by his palm, turning into powder that scattered all over the ground. The trash that Lian was cursing was, naturally, Hong Su. Initially he thought it would be easy for Hong Su to kill Duan Lingtian since he had the forbidden pill, the Kismet rejoining pill, that Hong Su's strength was close to the Saint Celestial stage. Who knew God would play a joke on him? Even Hong Su, who had consumed the forbidden pill, the Kismet reuniting pill, was not a match for Duan Lingtian. This was because Duan Lingtian was a 9-clawed dragon warrior. During the final moment of the death Duan Lingtian and Hong Su's battle, Duan Lingtian had transformed into a 9-clawed dragon warrior. That was why he was able to withstand Hong Su's full-force attack after consuming the forbidden pill, the Kismet reuniting pill. It was also the most critical moment. The failure of that attack meant Hong Su no longer had the chance to kill Duan Lingtian. And that Duan Lingtian. He's actually a 9-clawed dragon warrior. What did he do to deserve the legacy left behind by a 9-clawed divine dragon? Damn it. Damn it. Li An's expression turned grave when he thought about how Duan Lingtian was a 9-clawed dragon warrior. Duan Lingtian must be eliminated. He must be eliminated before he grows stronger. Li An said through gritted teeth after he took a deep breath. In the past, the innate talent in the martial Dao and divine ability that Duan Lingtian had displayed was enough to make him wary. Now that he found out that Duan Lingtian was a 9-clawed dragon warrior, his heart could not help but tremble. He was even more wary of Duan Lingtian now. If the conflict between him and Duan Lingtian was only a minor one, perhaps he would have put down his pride and taken the initiative to seek peace with Duan Lingtian due to Duan Lingtian's identity as a 9-clawed dragon warrior. After all, he did not know if Duan Lingtian had contacted the dragons or not. Although the current dragons were only slightly stronger than an ordinary first-rate force due to the fact that they only had a few 7-clawed divine dragons, the strength of the dragons was something that he could not help but be wary of. Even though any one of the 3 great sects was much stronger than the Dragon Clan, they did not dare to provoke the Dragon Clan. Dragons were an ancient and mysterious race. This clan had existed in the Dao Martial Saint Land for a very long time. It had even surpassed the 3 great sects. Who would believe that such an ancient and mysterious clan did not have any trump cards? However, Li An knew very well what was going on. The conflict between him and Duan Lingtian had long since reached a point of no return. There was simply no room for negotiation. What he needed to do now was to kill the Duan Lingtian before the Duan Lingtian matured. Otherwise, once Duan Lingtian matured, he would be dead for sure. Before Hong Su committed suicide, he met eyes with Duan Lingtian for a while. I'm sure he must have communicated with Duan Lingtian via voice transmission during that period of time. Even though Li An wasn't present when Duan Lingtian and Hong Su fought, Li An didn't dare to offend Duan Lingtian. However, through the people he had planted in the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine, he had learned about the entire situation. He had not missed out on any insignificant details. Hong Su must have sold me out. Moreover, if I'm not mistaken, he must have asked Duan Lingtian to help inform the Hong clan so that they can leave their homeland. However, does he really think I'll leave the Hong clan behind after he kills Duan Lingtian? I'm not so stupid that I don't even know the principle of eliminating the source of trouble. Li An snorted coldly as he narrowed his eyes. A sinister smile appeared on his face. Just 2 days ago, after Hong Su had entered the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine, he had made a trip to the Hong clan and annihilated the entire clan. The Hong clan was located in the western region, and it was not far from Zoroastrianism. If he traveled at full speed, it would only take him half a day to reach the Hong clan. As for annihilating the entire clan, it would not even take him half a day. Currently he had just returned from the Hong clan. I'm afraid Hong Su didn't expect that even if Duan Lingtian really sent someone to the Hong clan to inform them, what awaited them was only a pile of ruins. When Li An reached this part of his sentence, the sneer on his face turned even more sinister. However, news of Duan Lingtian being a 9-clawed dragon warrior and suspected to have obtained the inheritance of a 9-clawed divine dragon must be spread to the Northern Plethora sect and Zhao Chong. Li An's thoughts suddenly changed. When he muttered again, he could not help but think about some things. Currently, what we can be sure of is that ever since the Dao Martial Saint Land was divided into the Upper Province and Lower Province, there has never been a nine-clawed divine dragon. In other words, even if Duan Lingtian obtained the nine-clawed divine dragon's inheritance, it's highly likely that he did not obtain it in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. It's very likely that he obtained it in the lower province. Duan Lingtian might be from the lower province as well. The moment Lian thought of this, he immediately took out an empty jade token and sent it to the first-rate force, the Northern Plethora sect, to pass it to Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect. In the jade token he also gave Zhao Chong a suggestion. If they could not find anything about Duan Lingtian in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land, they could head to the lower province to search. Duan Lingtian did not expect Lian to be so smart. Just based on the fact that he was a nine-clawed dragon warrior, he was able to deduce that he was from the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. Chapter 1981. 2 days later, Duan Lingtian, who was in the punishment zone of the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine, met the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guixiong again. Damn. However, Guixiong's expression was grave. Elder Guixiong? A bad feeling rose in Duan Lingtian's heart when he saw Guixiong's expression. When I arrived, the Hong clan was already in ruins. The entire Hong clan had been annihilated. Guixiong said in a deep voice, actually before I arrived at the Hong clan, I already had my suspicions. As far as I know, Lian is a ruthless and meticulous person. Perhaps, from the moment he wanted to use Hong Su to deal with you, he had no intention of letting the Hong clan go. Even if Hong Su killed you, he wouldn't let the Hong clan go. This was because he was worried the Hong clan would seek revenge from him in the future. After all, there's no such thing as an absolute secret in this world. Sooner or later, the Hong clan would suspect him of Hong Su's death. As it turns out, my guess was right. Lian had already made his move and annihilated the Hong clan before I arrived. Guixiong finished speaking in one breath. How ruthless. Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed, and his heart couldn't help but tremble as he deeply realized Lian's ruthlessness. The sense of danger he felt increased immediately. At the same time, Duan Lingtian thought to himself, Hong Su, I've already fulfilled your request. Unfortunately, Lian has already made his move on your clan. However, you don't have to worry. It won't be long before I send Lian down to reunite with you. As Duan Lingtian thought to himself, his eyes flashed coldly. He would kill Lian sooner or later. Suddenly, Guixiong seemed to have thought of something. He said to Duan Lingtian, apart from that, I plan to go to the Saint Land Enforcement Hall today and sue Lian for threatening Hong Su and sending him to the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine to kill you. However, you must be mentally prepared. For this matter, the Holy Land Enforcement Hall will only punish Lian symbolically at most, and this matter won't spread. Can we spread the news ourselves? Duan Lingtian recalled the incident from before. It was precisely because he spread the news that Li An's eldest direct disciple, Wei He, was pushed into the limelight and caused Wei He to be executed. Don't be foolish. However, as soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, he was rejected by Guixiong. In the next moment, Guixiong said solemnly, this matter is completely different from the previous matter. The previous matter was more of an attempt by the Saint Lands Enforcement Hall to protect their dignity. After all, Wei He's actions were a challenge to the authority of the Holy Lands Enforcement Hall. However, this matter is not as exaggerated as it seems. Even if news of this spread out, it's impossible for the Enforcement Hall to execute Lian. After all, Lian is a Silver Flame Elder and he didn't kill you personally. The most important thing is that you are safe and sound. When Guixiong reached the end of his sentence, he looked at Duan Lingtian with a complicated gaze. Unless you can get the dragons to intervene in this matter, perhaps the pressure from the dragons might be enough to make the Saint Land Enforcement Hall consider executing Lian. When Guixiong met Duan Lingtian previously, he did not know Duan Lingtian was a nine-clawed dragon warrior. It was only when he returned today that he heard Duan Lingtian was a nine-clawed dragon warrior. With Duan Lingtian's identity as a nine-clawed dragon warrior, his position among the dragons was not low. It was comparable to an eight-clawed divine dragon. Dragons? Upon hearing Guixiong's words, Duan Lingtian could not help but smile wryly as he shook his head. Elder Guixiong, I don't have any contact with the dragons. In fact, I don't even know where the dragons are. For this reason, it's impossible for me to ask the dragons to intervene in this matter. It seems like it's just as they guessed. You must have obtained the legacy of a nine-clawed divine dragon. Guixiong sighed. Duan Lingtian remained silent. However, Guixiong took this as a tacit agreement. If I'm not mistaken, you must have obtained the legacy of a nine-clawed divine dragon in the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint Land, right? As far as I know, ever since the Dao Martial Saint Land was divided into two, the upper and lower province, there has never been a 9-clawed divine dragon in the Dao Martial Saint Land. Guxiong speculated. Ever since the Dao Martial Saint Land was divided into two, the upper and lower province, there had never been a 9-clawed divine dragon in the Dao Martial Saint Land? Upon hearing Guxiong's speculation, Duan Lingtian seemed to have recalled something. His expression turned grave immediately. Why didn't I think of this before? At this moment, the reason Duan Lingtian's expression was so grave was because of Guxiong's speculation. He was not surprised when others guessed he had obtained the legacy of a 9-clawed divine dragon. However, what did Guxiong say earlier? Guxiong actually guessed he had obtained the technique to transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior from the Wuxia subterranean. Naturally, Duan Lingtian knew what this meant. Guxiong could guess it, how could Lian not? Moreover, Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect, could not guess it as well? Damn it. Why didn't I think of this earlier? If I knew transforming into a 9-clawed dragon warrior would expose my origins in the Wuxia subterranean, I'd rather use the Jasper celestial sword than transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior. Duan Lingtian regretted it. He really regretted it now. He knew that by doing this he had left behind a hidden danger for his family and friends. This was equivalent to him providing Lian and Yang Chong with clues about his background. Duan Lingtian. Guxiong was puzzled when he saw the grave expression on Duan Lingtian's face. I'm fine. I'm fine. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled apologetically at Guxiong. Elder Guxiong, thank you for everything you've done for me. I, Duan Lingtian, will remember this favor. It's nothing. Guxiong shook his head and smiled. Then his expression turned solemn as he said solemnly, Duan Lingtian, with your strength, you'll definitely be able to pass the Saint Land's assessment soon and enter the Saint Land to become a Saint Land disciple. However, you'll have to be careful when you become a Saint Land disciple. Now that you've exposed your identity as a 9-clawed dragon warrior, not only will Lian, who'll fight to the death with you, not be afraid of you, but he'll kill you at all costs. To him, as long as you're alive, he'll be in trouble sooner or later. For this reason he won't show any mercy to you. Guxiong reminded him solemnly. I understand. Duan Lingtian nodded. Naturally he knew this, but he did not care about it at all. What he was most worried about was not his own safety, but his family's safety. Elder Guxiong, I'd like to ask you for a favor. Duan Lingtian suddenly took a deep breath as though he had made up his mind. Then he prepared a voice transmission jade token and asked Guxiong to pass it to Zhu Luqi on his behalf. The content of the jade token was to ask Zhu Luqi to return to the Wuxia subterranean and inform his family to leave the Azure Cloud Mansion as soon as possible to find a safe place to seek refuge. In the future he would bring them out after he had dealt with all the threats. Apart from that, Duan Lingtian also asked Guxiong for help to secretly send Zhu Luqi to the inter-province transportation formation without Lian noticing anything. You're from the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint Land? Although Guxiong was slightly surprised by this, he was not too surprised. After all, he had already guessed that Duan Lingtian had obtained the technique to transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior from the lower province, since the legacy of a 9-clawed divine dragon would usually only exist in the lower province. As for why Duan Lingtian asked him to send someone to the inter-province transportation formation, he could roughly guess the reason. You're worried that Lian and Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect, will go to the lower province to deal with your family and friends? Yes. Duan Lingtian trusted Guxiong. At the very least he did not have any conflict with Guxiong. Moreover, Guxiong usually stood against Lian, so it was impossible for him to betray him. Please help me, Elder Guxiong. If this matter is successful, I'll owe you a huge favor. Elder Guxiong, I'll owe you a huge favor. Duan Lingtian said solemnly to Guxiong. He especially emphasized the words big favor. Even Guxiong did not know why, but when he heard the words huge favor from Duan Lingtian, he felt a little emotional. Perhaps it was because he could see that Duan Lingtian had a bright future, and the huge favor he promised Duan Lingtian would be more important in the future. To me this matter is as easy as lifting a finger. I'll send him off right now. After Guxiong took the voice transmission jade token from Duan Lingtian, he left the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine and headed to the White Tiger Sanctum to look for Zhu Luqi. Duan Lingtian watched as Guxiong left. He only sighed in relief when Guxiong's silhouette disappeared from his sight. With Palace Master Zhu's warning, I'm sure Father knows what to do. It's a good thing that Elder Guxiong reminded me earlier. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known that I've inadvertently caused such a disaster. When Duan Tian thought of this, he could not help but break out in cold sweat. If something went wrong, it would definitely cause a huge disaster. Actually, Duan Tian wanted to return to the lower province personally. However, when he recalled that he was currently serving in the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine and could not leave, he dismissed this thought. Moreover, even if he managed to comprehend the number 1 defensive divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, in a few more days, he would definitely be targeted when he entered the Saint Land. It was impossible for him to leave the Zoroastrianism and head to the lower province without alerting Lian. I'll continue to comprehend the Black Turtle's Barrier. I'll definitely be able to comprehend it in 5 to 6 days at most. At that time, I'll be able to leave the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine and head to the Saint Land to become a Saint Land disciple. The moment Duan Tian thought of this, he returned to the Primus house and the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. The 5 to 6 days he mentioned referred to the time in the outside world. 5 to 6 days in the outside world was equivalent to 50 to 60 days in the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. In other words, Duan Tian was confident he could successfully comprehend the number 1 defensive divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, in 2 months. Chapter 1982. 6 days passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, Duan Tian appeared out of thin air in the only Primus room in the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine's punishment zone. After putting away the 7 Treasures Jewel Pagoda, Duan Tian pushed open the door and came to the front yard of the huge mansion. He raised his head to look at the sky and took a deep breath. The heavens do not disappoint those who work hard. I finally succeeded in comprehending it. Almost as soon as Duan Tian finished speaking, boundless Sun Saint power immediately swept out of his body through the 99 Saint veins in his body. When it spread out, it formed a huge shadow around his body. It was the silhouette of a black tortoise. At the same time, the light of the Sun Saint force was faintly discernible on the black tortoise's shadow. The gigantic shadow of the black tortoise protected Duan Tian within, leaving no gaps. Clearly, this was the most powerful divine ability of the Black Turtle Sanctum, the Black Turtle's Barrier, that Duan Tian had successfully comprehended and mastered. It was also the number 1 divine ability of Zoroastrianism. Now, all the high-grade divine abilities I've mastered, offensive divine abilities, defensive divine abilities, movement divine abilities and support divine abilities, are all gathered. A satisfied smile appeared on Duan Tian's face as he withdrew the black tortoise silhouette. Since I've successfully comprehended the Black Tortoise's Barrier, there's no need for me to mine Saint Stones today. I can leave now. Duan Tian's eyes lit up. He rose into the air and flew away from the residence of the Four Symbols Sanctum's disciples in the first mine's punishment zone. In the past few days, although Duan Tian had been comprehending the divine ability, the Black Tortoise's Barrier, he still took some time out to mine Saint Stones to complete the missions given to the Four Symbols Sanctum's disciples serving in the first mine. Of course, while completing the mission, he also threw a lot of first-grade Saint Stones into the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. He found another quasi-celestial grade Saint Stone mine, but it was not as big as the one he found before. He casually threw it into the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. Where should we go now? After leaving the residence of the Four Symbols Sanctum's disciples in the first mine's punishment zone, Duan Tian did not know where he could go to display his divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, in order to be pardoned. Finally, he went to the registration area of the new disciples in the punishment zone of the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine. What a coincidence. The one on duty today was the same elder from the punishment district whom he had met the other day. The eyes of the punishment district's elder, who was wearing the exclusive uniform of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's Bronze Flame Elder, lit up when he saw Duan Tian. At the same time, a puzzled expression appeared on his face. Duan Tian, what's the matter? He had heard that Duan Tian was a 9-clawed dragon warrior and that his strength was almost on par with a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse after he transformed into a 9-clawed dragon warrior. Therefore, when facing the Duan Tian now, he was even more polite than before. Elder, I would like to ask. If I want to be pardoned by the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine, who should I look for? Duan Tian asked straightforwardly. Pardoned? The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's Bronze Flame Elder was stunned when he heard Duan Tian's words. Then he smiled wryly. Duan Tian, I know you're very strong. However, if you want to be pardoned, you'll have to pass the Saint Lands assessment and become a Saint Land disciple first. When you participate in the Saint Lands assessment, you can apply to leave the punishment zone of the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine temporarily. The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's bronze flame elder explained patiently. Elder. As far as I know, if one manages to comprehend the divine ability from one of the sanctum's most treasured sanctums, one can be pardoned directly, right? I remember seeing your brother Sunda did the same. Duan Lingtian said again. Gasp. The moment Duan Lingtian's words left his mouth, the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's bronze flame elder narrowed his eyes immediately. At the same time he gasped in shock. Yuve successfully comprehended the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier. Yes. As Duan Lingtian nodded, the Sun Saint energy on his body surged out and transformed into the silhouette of a gigantic black turtle. It's really the Black Turtle's Barrier. The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's bronze flame elder could not help but gasp when he saw the Black Turtle's silhouette. In less than a month, 2 Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples had successfully comprehended the Black Turtle's Barrier, the Black Turtle's Barrier. Did they not say that the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability was the most difficult to comprehend? Was this a joke? Since Duan Lingtian had comprehended the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, the rest was easy. The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's bronze flame elder at the registration office contacted another punishment zone's elder and asked him to bring Duan Lingtian to the Saint Land Silver Flame elder who was in charge of pardoning. As long as Duan Lingtian cast the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, in front of the Silver Flame elder, he would be pardoned and be able to leave the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mind to head to the Saint Land and become a Saint Land disciple. Whoosh. Under the Silver Flame elder's watchful eyes, Duan Lingtian cast the divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, again. A gigantic black turtle's silhouette appeared and protected him. Upon seeing this, even the Saint Land Silver Flame elder could not help but gasp. Duan Lingtian, you really live up to your reputation. I heard that you've already mastered 3 high-grade divine abilities. Now that you've mastered a high-grade defensive divine ability, you've mastered 4 types of high-grade divine abilities. An envious expression could be seen on the Silver Flame elder's face as he spoke. Even he had only mastered 2 high-grade divine abilities. However, the person in front of him had mastered a total of 4 high-grade abilities, and they were all different types of high-grade abilities. Offensive divine ability, defensive divine ability, movement divine ability, assist-type divine ability. He was envious and jealous of Duan Lingtian for having all 4 of them. This is the pardon document. From now on, you no longer have to serve in the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine. The Silver Flame elder raised his hand and handed the pardon document to Duan Lingtian. With this pardon document, Duan Lingtian would no longer be obstructed when he left the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine. Otherwise, he would have been stopped by the patrolling elders of the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine before he could leave. Duan Lingtian, you've already successfully comprehended the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, so you can head to the Saint Land directly. As long as you cast the divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, in front of the patrolling elders of the Saint Land, he'll bring you to the Saint Land to register as a Saint Land disciple. Before that, if you have any trivial matters to attend to in the Black Turtle Sanctum, it's best for you to return first. After all, once you become a Saint Land disciple, it'll be difficult for you to return to the Four Symbols Sanctums. The Silver Flame elder reminded Duan Lingtian before he left. However, Duan Lingtian did not have any trivial matters to attend to in the Black Turtle Sanctum. For this reason, after he left the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine, he directly made his way to the Saint Land. Soon after, he was stopped by the patrolling elders of the Saint Land. After Duan Lingtian cast the divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, the patrolling elders brought him into the Saint Land. It was Duan Lingtian's first time in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. He looked around curiously. The Saint Land of Zoroastrianism was a barren desert. There were mountains and rivers, but there was not even a hint of green. In this barren land, apart from the mountains and rivers, the most common thing one could see was red. From afar, the red color looked like red flowers. However, they were not real flowers. For humans, it was a very representative thing. Without it, survival would be a problem. Flames. The red flowers that filled the ancient and mysterious barren land were the flames that humans relied on to survive. Especially in this desert, the flames were like a veil of mystery and supremacy. Spacious altars could be seen everywhere in this barren land. In the center of these altars, there were large braziers that were held up by brackets. Dazzling flames rose from the braziers, and a scorching aura swept out. It turned into heat waves that hit the people in the surroundings, causing many of them to break out in cold sweat. However, these people did not feel uncomfortable or disgusted. Instead, they prostrated themselves on the ground and kowtowed to the braziers. To be more precise, they were kowtowing to the flames that rose from the braziers. Upon closer inspection, one could see their eyes were filled with reverence when they looked at the flames. It was as though each of them was a devout believer of the flames, and the flames were their religion. This was indeed the case. These people were natives of the saint land of Zoroastrianism. They were ordinary people who were self-sufficient and lived in seclusion. They believed in the flames, and they were the most devout believers of the flames. In their eyes, the flames were everything. Only with the flames could there be a world. Is this how the Christian name of Zoroastrianism came about? Duan Lingtian thought to himself as he looked at the group of people who were devoutly worshipping the flames. Duan Lingtian continued to follow the Saint Land's patrolling elder. Behind the barren land, a group of active volcanoes appeared. The peaks of the volcanoes continued to spit out scorching flames. Every time it spat out flames, it would fill the sky with a red glow, causing the surrounding environment to become extremely bright. In the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism, due to the existence of these volcanoes, there's never night. Perhaps, night will only truly descend when these active volcanoes no longer spit out flames. The Saint Land's patrolling elder explained. That volcano. Soon after, Duan Lingtian saw a gigantic volcano. This volcano was surrounded by active volcanoes that continued to spit out flames. It was like a moon surrounded by stars. It was like an emperor. However, since it did not spit out flames, it formed a strong contrast with the active volcanoes around it. This volcano is also an active volcano. However, the frequency of its spitting flames is not high. It only spits out flames once a month. As though he saw Duan Lingtian's confusion, the Saint Land's patrolling elder explained. Chapter 1983. Upon hearing the Saint Land's patrolling elder's words, Duan Lingtian nodded before he continued to look up. In the sky above the gigantic volcano, there were islands floating in the air. On these islands, there were sparse clusters of buildings. The floating islands surrounded a huge floating island in the middle, like stars surrounding the moon. This enormous floating island was the main island. That huge floating island is the main island of the fire worship sect Saint Land. It's where you'll be staying. You'll be staying there as well, the Saint Land's patrolling elder explained to Duan Lingtian. As for the islands around the main island, they're the residences of the Bronze Flame Elders and true disciples of the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. Every Bronze Flame Elder and true disciple has their own independent island. The Saint Land's patrolling elder continued to explain. True disciple? Duan Lingtian knew about the Bronze Flame Elders. However, this was his first time hearing about true disciples. He could not help but look at the Saint Land's patrolling elder in confusion. Elder, what's the deal with true disciples? In response to Duan Lingtian's question, the Saint Land's patrolling elder replied in a timely manner, true disciples are the most outstanding disciples in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. They're also the future pillars of Zoroastrianism. There are two ways to become a true disciple. The first way is to possess an indigo innate spiritual root or above and have a cultivation base at the divine saint stage or above. The second way is to have a cultivation base at the saint celestial stage. A monstrous genius with an indigo innate spiritual root or above? Have a cultivation base at the saint celestial stage? Upon hearing the Saint Land's patrolling elder's words, Duan Lingtian's eyes widened immediately. He finally understood the significance of being a true disciple in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. A true disciple was equivalent to the future of Zoroastrianism. As such, it was understandable that each of them had an independent island around the main island, as a place of cultivation. Elder. All of a sudden Duan Lingtian seemed to have recalled something. He asked again, don't tell me the Silver Flame Elders, Golden Flame Elders, Guardians, Vice-Sect Leaders, and Sect Leader of the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism are all staying on the main island? As he spoke, Duan Lingtian looked at the gigantic floating island in front of him. Of course not. The Saint Land's patrolling elder shook his head and said, in our fire worship sect, those who are Silver Flame Elders and above usually stay on the otherworldly island. Otherworldly island? Duan Lingtian was puzzled. Come with me. The Saint Land's patrolling elder called out to Duan Lingtian before he soared up into the sky. Duan. After a short while, Duan Lingtian discovered the Saint Land's patrolling elder had brought him up to the sky. They continued to fly even after they had surpassed the height of the main island. At the same time, the main island's full view appeared before Duan Lingtian's eyes. In terms of size, the main island was not as big as the Black Turtle Sanctum that Duan Lingtian was in previously. There were mountains and rivers on the main island. Apart from that, one could also see many green plants. Apart from that, there were also various buildings. The buildings were scattered everywhere in an orderly manner. When one looked at it from afar, it gave off a comfortable feeling. Don't tell me the otherworldly island is above the clouds in the sky? Duan Lingtian could not help but wonder when he saw the Saint Lands patrolling elder flying through the clouds and reaching a higher altitude. When he saw the scenery behind the Saint Lands patrolling elder, he realized he had guessed correctly. These are the otherworldly islands? After flying through the clouds and reaching a higher altitude, Duan Lingtian's attention was focused on the floating islands in the distance. These floating islands were located above the clouds above the main island of the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. They were located at 4 different levels. At the highest point there was only one floating island. Below that there were a total of 5 floating islands. Below that there were a total of 10 floating islands. Below that there were a total of 50 floating islands. That's right. These are the otherworldly islands. The Saint Lands patrolling elder nodded. Look at the otherworldly island at the highest point. That's where Lord Sect Leader of Zoroastrianism cultivates. Lord Sect Leader is currently in closed-door cultivation there. The Saint Lands patrolling elder had a respectful expression on his face when he mentioned the Sect Leader of Zoroastrianism. Sect Leader of Zoroastrianism? Upon hearing the Saint Lands patrolling elder's words, Duan Lingtian's eyes suddenly narrowed. A cold light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Currently, it was precisely because the sect leader of Zoroastrianism had not come out of closed-door cultivation that his wife and daughter were only imprisoned in the Saint Lands Law Enforcement Hall. They were not executed. However, once the sect leader of Zoroastrianism came out of closed-door cultivation, his wife and daughter would face execution. The outcome of the execution would definitely be death. If possible, he really hoped that the sect leader of Zoroastrianism would never come out of closed-door cultivation. However, he also knew that it was destined to be a delusion. The 5 otherworldly islands below are the cultivation places of the 2 deputy sect leaders and 3 guardians of Zoroastrianism. The Saint Lands patrolling elder continued. At the same time, Duan Lingtian also regained his senses. He had heard of the 2 deputy sect leaders of Zoroastrianism before. As for the 3 guardians, they were even more well known. It was said that the 3 guardians of Zoroastrianism were the senior powerhouses of Zoroastrianism. Their positions in Zoroastrianism were as high as the 4 kings of Zhuangzi Buddhism. Xiezong. When Duan Lingtian thought about the 4 kings of Zhuangzi Buddhism, he could not help but recall the Zhuangzi Buddhism elder Xiezong who had snatched his Devil Seal tablet and killed Elder Ku in the Azure Cloud Mansion in the lower province. As far as he knew, Xiezong was the son of the Golden Lion King, one of the 4 kings of Zhuangzi Buddhism. Duan Lingtian had long regarded Xiezong as his mortal enemy. However, since Xiezong was too strong, he could only bury this hatred in the depths of his heart for now. However, when he was strong enough, he would definitely look for Xiezong and kill him to avenge Elder Ku and take back the Devil Seal tablet. Xiezong, just you wait. It won't be long before I come looking for you. At that time, I'll let you know that even an ant in your eyes can take your life. Duan Lingtian swore as his eyes gleamed coldly. At the same time, the Saint Lands patrolling elder's voice continued to enter Duan Lingtian's ears, causing Duan Lingtian to regain his senses. The 10 islands below are the cultivation grounds of the 10 golden flame elders of Zoroastrianism. However, most of the time, these 10 islands are empty since the 10 golden flame elders are either in charge of the 4 symbols sanctums or in the minds of the 4 symbols sanctums. Since you're from the 4 symbols sanctums, I'm sure you know how important the 4 symbols sanctums and the minds of the 4 symbols sanctums are to Zoroastrianism. The Saint Lands patrolling elder continued to speak. Duan Lingtian nodded. Naturally, he knew about this. In Zoroastrianism, the 4 symbols sanctums was not only a place that provided the Saint Land with new blood, but it was also the gateway to Zoroastrianism. If someone attacked the Zoroastrianism, the 4 symbols sanctums would be the first to bear the brunt of the attack. It was reassuring to have the 4 golden flame elders in charge of such an important place. As for the minds of the 4 symbols sanctums, they were the second gateway to Zoroastrianism. Once the 4 symbols sanctums fell, they would have to fend off the next wave of attacks. Moreover, there were first-grade saint stones reserves in each of the mines. For this reason, the mines of the 4 symbols sanctums were guarded by the remaining 6 golden flame elders of Zoroastrianism. For this reason, it was rare to see Golden Flame Elders in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. Usually, the 10 Golden Flame Elders would stay in the Four Symbols Sanctums and the mines of the Four Symbols Sanctums. In the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism, the people in charge were mostly Silver Flame Elders and Bronze Flame Elders. The group of Silver Flame Elders and Bronze Flame Elders in the Saint Land was directly led by the two vice-sect leaders of Zoroastrianism. In Zoroastrianism, after the sect leader and guardians, the two vice-sect leaders were the most powerful. They were even stronger than the 10 Golden Flame Elders. For this reason, having them guard the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism would form the third line of defense for Zoroastrianism. If a strong enemy attacked, the three lines of defense would be able to hold on until the three most powerful guardians and the sect leader of Zoroastrianism personally made a move. Zoroastrianism is indeed one of the three most powerful forces in the Tao Martial Saint Land. Duan Lingtian sighed inwardly. As for the remaining 50 islands, I'm sure you can guess that those are the residences of the Silver Flame Elders. The Saint Land's patrolling elder continued. Duan Lingtian nodded. Indeed, he had guessed it. It's all right to look at these islands from afar. However, if we get any closer, let alone you, even I will be severely punished if I'm caught. When the Saint Land's patrolling elder reached this point, a hint of dread could be seen in his eyes. The Saint Land's patrolling elder was merely a Bronze Flame Elder in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. He was not qualified to cultivate on the islands. Let's go. I'll bring you to register. The registration office for our Zoroastrianism's Saint Land is on the main island. The Saint Land's patrolling elder called out to Duan Lingtian again. The moment his words left his mouth, he took the lead to descend from the sky and flew toward the main island in the distance. Upon hearing this, Duan Lingtian naturally followed suit. When they arrived near the main island, Duan Lingtian saw many figures passing by in a hurry. These people were wearing the Saint Land's disciple uniform. It was obvious they were Saint Land disciples. A fiery red flame was embroidered on the chest of the Saint Land's disciple uniform. It was a seal. This was something that the Four Symbols Sanctums did not have. The Saint Land's Silver Flame Elder in the punishment zone of the Four Symbols Sanctums first mine and this Saint Land's patrolling elder also have this seal on their uniforms. It seems like this is the symbol of the Saint Land's elders and disciples. Chapter 1984. At this moment, Duan Lingtian had already changed back to the uniform of a Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple. Naturally, he attracted the attention of many Saint Land disciples when he appeared together with a Saint Land Bronze Flame Elder. A Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple? Some of the Saint Land disciples' eyes landed on Duan Lingtian's exclusive uniform. They could see through his background. A few days ago, a Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple entered the Saint Land and became a Saint Land disciple because he comprehended the treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier. It has only been 2 weeks. Why is there another Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple here? A Saint Land disciple said in surprise. Although they were far away, Duan Lingtian still heard his words. Duan Lingtian naturally knew the Saint Land disciple was talking about Sunda, who was also a Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple. Sunda had successfully comprehended the treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, in the Black Turtle Sanctum. Not only was he pardoned in the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine, but he was even allowed to enter the Saint Land and become a Saint Land disciple. In fact, Sunda was the reason Duan Lingtian was able to appear here today. After all, if Sunda had not cast the Black Turtle's Barrier in front of him, he would not have been able to comprehend it so quickly. Don't tell me this Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple has also comprehended the treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier? After all, the Saint Land assessment won't begin for a while. The Four Symbols Sanctum's disciples who are allowed to enter the Saint Land must have comprehended one of the treasured divine abilities in the Four Symbols Sanctums or be recommended by the Sanctum leader of the Black Turtle Sanctum. Another Saint Land disciple chimed in. However, many Saint Land disciples scoffed at this Saint Land disciple's words. He has also comprehended the Black Turtle's Barrier? I think you're thinking too much. That's right. The Black Turtle's Barrier is not as simple as the treasured divine ability in the Black Turtle Sanctum. It's also the #1 defensive divine ability in Zoroastrianism. Among the high-grade divine abilities in the fire worship sect, the difficulty of comprehending it is definitely in the top tier. It's not easy to comprehend the Black Turtle's Barrier. In my opinion, this Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple must have been recommended by the Sanctum leader of the Black Turtle Sanctum because of his high innate talent. I think so too. The group of Saint Land disciples discussed among themselves. Based on their words, they seemed to have confirmed that Duan Lingtian was recommended by the sanctum leader of the Black Turtle Sanctum. In the face of such a misunderstanding, Duan Lingtian only smiled calmly, not minding it at all. The patrolling elder of the Holy Land beside him shook his head inwardly when he heard the discussions of the Holy Land disciples. Because he knew very well in his heart, the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple next to him was not recommended by the sanctum leader of the Black Turtle Sanctum. Instead, it was because this disciple had displayed the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, that the sanctum leader of the Black Turtle Sanctum had personally brought this disciple to the main island of the Saint Land for registration. This was also one of his duties as the patrolling elder of the Holy Land. So many people. When Duan Lingtian and the patrolling elder of the Holy Land passed by the square in the middle of the Saint Island, they noticed many people had gathered there. At first glance there were at least 1,000 people. 1,000 people might not be a big deal in any of the four symbols sanctums. However, what was this place? This was the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. Generally speaking, Zoroastrianism disciples who could enter the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism would be recommended by the sanctum leaders of the four symbols sanctums to become a disciple of the Saint Land unless they possessed monstrous innate talent as soon as they entered the Zoroastrianism. It was either that or they possessed monstrous innate talent and managed to comprehend the treasured divine ability of one of the four symbols sanctums before their cultivation base was at the mastery quintessential saint stage. Otherwise, they would need to have a cultivation base at the Mastery Quintessential Saint stage or above to pass the Saint Land's assessment and become a disciple of the Saint Land. Due to this reason, Duan Lingtian was surprised to see 1,000 people in the Saint Island Square. The 1,000 people in the Saint Island Square were definitely not all the Saint Land's disciples in the Zoroastrianism Saint Land. Based on this, there must be at least a few thousand Saint Land's disciples in the Zoroastrianism Saint Land. What did it mean to have a few thousand people at the Mastery Quintessential Saint stage or above? This is the central square of the main island of the Zoroastrianism Saint Land. It's usually the busiest place here. Apart from the various palaces, it's also the place where the Saint Land's disciples discuss their martial arts. Many Saint Land's disciples who have reached a bottleneck in their cultivation would gather here to join in the fun. Who knows, they might be enlightened and find an opportunity to improve their cultivation base. At the same time, the Saint Land's patrolling elder's voice resonated in the air, allowing Duan Lingtian to know where he was. The central square of the Saint Island. Elder, how many Saint Land's disciples are there in the Saint Land? Duan Lingtian asked as he looked at the 1,000 people in the central square again. What's wrong? Are you shocked to see that there are more than 1,000 people in the central square? The Saint Land's patrolling elder asked with a smile. Yes. Duan Lingtian did not deny it. If there are more than 1,000 Saint Land's disciples in the central square, there must be at least 3,000 to 5,000 Saint Land's disciples in the Saint Land, right? Duan Lingtian speculated as he waited for the Saint Land's patrolling elder's reply. It's not as exaggerated as 3,000 to 5,000. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, the Saint Land's patrolling elder shook his head. I've already told you that many Saint Land's disciples who have reached a bottleneck in their cultivation would gather in the central square. Their purpose is simple. They want to interact with the other Saint Land's disciples and be enlightened by the other Saint Land's disciples' words. From there, they'll find an opportunity to improve their cultivation base. The improvement mentioned here does not only refer to cultivation, but also martial arts techniques and even divine abilities. I'm sure you know that 99% of the Saint Land's disciples in the Zoroastrianism Saint Land are at the Mastery Quintessential Saint stage or above. Some of them are at the Mastery Quintessential Saint stage, but most of them are at the peak of the Quintessential Saint stage. Most of the Saint Land's disciples at the peak of the Quintessential Saint stage have been stuck at the peak of the Quintessential Saint stage for hundreds or even thousands of years. If they haven't broken through to the Saint Celestial stage, they won't be able to become a true disciple or a bronze flame elder. The Saint Land's patrolling elder said slowly. Duan Lingtian nodded. Regarding this, he could understand. After all, not all Saint Land's disciples at the peak of the Quintessential Saint stage could break through to the Saint Celestial stage. One had to rely on innate talent and fortuitous encounters to break through to the Saint Celestial stage. Innate talent accounted for more than 90% of the time. Generally speaking, those with green innate spiritual roots or lower would not be able to break through to the Saint Celestial stage unless they had fortuitous encounters. Even for those with green innate spiritual roots, it was not easy for them to break through to the Saint Celestial stage. Only those with blue innate spiritual roots or higher would be able to break through to the Saint Celestial stage without facing any major bottlenecks. Naturally, this meant there were no major bottlenecks. Due to various reasons, one would more or less encounter a minor bottleneck. Take Duan Lingtian for example. Although he possessed a blue innate spiritual root, his cultivation base was only at the peak of the Divine Saint stage. However, due to the fact that his cultivation speed was too fast, it would be difficult for him to break through to the exemplary saint stage in a short period of time before his cultivation base at the peak of the Divine Saint stage stabilized. This was the small bottleneck. Actually, the thousands of Saint Land's disciples gathered in the central square account for more than half of the Saint Land's disciples. There are over 2,000 Saint Land's disciples in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. When the Saint Land's patrolling elder spoke again, Duan Lingtian realized he had guessed wrongly. However, even if he guessed wrongly, the number of Saint Land's disciples in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism still shocked him. This meant there were about 2,000 people at the Mastery Quintessential Saint stage or above in the Zoroastrianism. Most of them were at the peak of the Quintessential Saint stage. As expected of one of the three most powerful sects in the upper province of the Tao Martial Saint Land. With such a foundation and strength, it's not something a first-rate force can compare to, let alone those forces that are weaker than a first-rate force. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Put everything else aside for now. According to the information he had obtained from the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guixiong, the Hong clan's Hong clan was in the Hong Kong clan. The Hong clan behind Hong Su, whom Lian had threatened to kill him, was one of the third-rate forces in the upper province of the Tao Martial Saint Land. However, such a force was annihilated by a Silver Flame Elder from the Zoroastrianism alone. Although the Silver Flame Elder who attacked was powerful and could be considered as one of the best among the Silver Flame Elders in the Zoroastrianism, this was enough to show the difference between a third-rate force and a Zoroastrianism. A slightly stronger Silver Flame Elder from the Zoroastrianism is able to annihilate a third-rate force in the upper province on his own. Doesn't this mean a slightly stronger Golden Flame Elder from the Zoroastrianism would also be able to annihilate a second-rate force in the upper province on his own? If they send out the vice-sect leader or the three great guardians, it wouldn't be difficult for them to annihilate a first-rate force? The moment Duan Lingtian thought of this, he could not help but gasp inwardly. At the same time, he was deeply aware of how terrifying Zoroastrianism was. Put aside the Saint Land disciples from the Zoroastrianism, just the high-ranking officials from the Zoroastrianism were all powerful people who could do whatever they wanted in the upper province of the Tao Martial Saint Land. As for the palaces around the central square, you can come and learn about them yourself after you've registered as a Saint Land disciple. The Saint Land's patrolling elder said to Duan Lingtian before he brought Duan Lingtian to the registration office for new disciples of the Zoroastrianism Saint Land. They did not stop along the way. What's your name? When they were about to arrive at the registration office for new disciples of the Zoroastrianism Saint Land, the Saint Land's patrolling elder suddenly looked at Duan Lingtian and asked without any warning. Ever since Duan Lingtian came to the Saint Land and cast the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's barrier, in front of him, the Saint Land's elder was stunned. It was only now that he realized. Chapter 1985. Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian smiled in response to the Saint Land's patrolling elder's question. He had a good impression of this patrolling elder who had patiently introduced him to the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. Duan Lingtian? However, as soon as Duan Lingtian's words left his mouth, the Saint Land's patrolling elder suddenly came to a halt. His eyes widened as he looked at Duan Lingtian in shock. You're Duan Lingtian? The Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple, Duan Lingtian, who can transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, went against the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder and offended the Northern Plethora sect's 5th Elder as soon as he entered the Fire Worship sect? Elder, you've heard of me? Duan Lingtian was equally shocked when he saw how shocked the Saint Land's patrolling elder was. His name had even spread to the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism? Of course I've heard of you. The Saint Land's patrolling elder nodded before he said with a wry smile on his face, put aside the fact that everyone in the Four Symbols Sanctums knows about you, Duan Lingtian, even in our Saint Land, apart from those who are in closed-door cultivation and those who are oblivious to the outside world, I'm afraid there aren't many who haven't heard of you, Duan Lingtian. I didn't expect the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple who mastered the Black Turtle Sanctum's divine ability, the Black Turtle's barrier, would be you, Duan Lingtian. As far as I know, you've already mastered 3 high-grade divine abilities before this. They're an offensive divine ability, a movement divine ability, and an assist-type divine ability. Now you've even mastered the Black Turtle Sanctum's divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, as well as the number 1 divine ability in Zoroastrianism. You've mastered all 4 types of high-grade divine abilities. Put everything else aside, in terms of divine ability comprehension, I'm afraid only Lord Sect Leader and the 3 Guardians in Zoroastrianism can compare to you. Even the 2 vice leaders of our Zoroastrianism are not as good as you in this regard. When the Saint Lands patrolling elder reached the end of his sentence, his eyes were filled with envy as he looked at Duanling Tian. Compared to Duanling Tian, he felt that he had wasted all these years of his life. As a bronze flame elder of the Saint Land, he had only mastered 1 high-grade divine ability. Compared to Duanling Tian, the difference was like heaven and earth. Fortunately, his innate spiritual root is only a yellow innate spiritual root, and his cultivation base is only at the peak of the exemplary saint stage. I wonder if he'll be able to break through to the quintessential saint stage. At the same time, the patrolling elders secretly rejoiced. When he thought about how Duanling Tian only possessed a yellow innate spiritual root, he felt much better. Although he was a Saint Land Bronze Flame Elder, he possessed a green innate spiritual root. He was much stronger than Duanling Tian in this regard. However, the patrolling elders of the Saint Land did not expect Duanling Tian to possess a yellow innate spiritual root. Duanling Tian's innate spiritual root was no longer a yellow innate spiritual root. Duanling Tian's innate spiritual root was currently a blue innate spiritual root. It was a grade higher than the green innate spiritual root. In the entire Zoroastrianism, there were only a few dozen people who possessed a blue innate spiritual root. Apart from that, as long as a person with a blue innate spiritual root did not die prematurely, he would be able to become a silver flame elder or even a golden flame elder in the Zoroastrianism in the future. Elder, you flatter me. I was just lucky. Duanling Tian smiled indifferently when he sensed the envious and jealous gazes from the Saint Land Enforcement Elder. He appeared very calm. The Saint Land's patrolling elders had a better impression of Duanling Tian when they saw how calm he was. At the same time, they could not help but sigh inwardly. Duanling Tian has a monstrous innate talent for divine abilities, and he's a good person as well. Unfortunately, God didn't bestow him with monstrous innate talent for divine abilities but not for martial Tao. Otherwise, he would have definitely become a prodigy of Zoroastrianism in the future. A prodigy was also known as a prodigy. In Zoroastrianism, only young prodigies with indigo innate spiritual roots were qualified to be called a prodigy. Naturally, being a prodigy was only a title. Could be used anywhere. However, those who were given the title of prodigy were like cranes in a flock of chickens. They were either extremely talented or powerful. Previously, before the Dao Martial Saint Land was divided into the Upper Province and the Lower Province, there was only one prodigy in the world. During that time, there was only one person in the Dao Martial Saint Land who was qualified to be called a prodigy. He was none other than the prodigy sword saint Feng Qingyang. It was also during that era that he was a legendary figure who stunned the entire era. Let's go. The Saint Land's new disciple registration area is just ahead. After the Saint Land's patrolling elders called out to Duanling Tian, they took the lead and descended. Naturally, Duanling Tian followed suit. The Saint Land's new disciple registration area was located in a side hall. It was very inconspicuous. If Duanling Tian were to look for it himself, he might not be able to find it. Elder Xiaozhen, aren't you supposed to be patrolling today? Why are you here? When Duanling Tian followed the Saint Land's patrolling elders into the side hall, he heard a loud voice coming from inside. It was a middle-aged man behind the counter in the side hall who was greeting the Saint Land's patrolling elders. This middle-aged man was dressed exactly like the Saint Land's patrolling elders. He was also a Saint Land's Bronze Flame Elder. Elder Xiaozhen? At this moment, Duanling Tian finally found out the name of the Saint Land's patrolling elders who had brought him here. Elder Ding Zhong, as the saying goes, one never visits a temple without a cause. I'm here to send him here. Now that he's here, it's time for me to return to my patrolling duties, Elder Xiaozhen said. The patrolling elder of the Holy Land, Xiaozhen, said. After he finished speaking, he first greeted the middle-aged man before looking at Duanling Tian and saying with a smile, I'll be leaving first. Elder Ding Zhong will make the arrangements for you. Thank you, Elder Xiaozhen. Xiaozhen left swiftly amidst Duanling Tian's thanks. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man behind the counter, the Saint Land's Bronze Flame Elder Ding Zhong, who was in charge of the new disciple registration, began to size up Duanling Tian. Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple? When Ding Zhong saw the uniform Duanling Tian was wearing, He raised an eyebrow before a smile appeared on his face. In his opinion, since this Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple was sent here by the St. Lands patrolling elders before the St. Lands assessment, he must have been recommended by the Sanctum leader of the Black Turtle Sanctum and possessed the recommendation document from the Sanctum leader of the Black Turtle Sanctum. Such existences were generally extremely monstrous existences. They must have at least a martial genius with a blue innate spiritual root or higher. Even if such a person had not matured yet, he was already worthy of Ding Zhong's respect and flattery. In fact, as long as such a person did not die prematurely, he would at least become a silver flame elder or even a golden flame elder in the Zoroastrianism when he matured in the future. There was a saying that went well: "You may ignore me today, but you won't be able to reach me tomorrow." Due to this reason, Ding Zhong wanted to build a good relationship with this genius disciple from the Black Turtle Sanctum before he matured. Ding Zhong immediately said to Duan Lingtian warmly and politely, "Little brother, take out the recommendation document that Sanctum leader Wu gave you. I'll register it for you now." The Sanctum leader of the Black Turtle Sanctum had the surname Wu. Duan Lingtian knew about this. Initially, Duan Lingtian was puzzled by Ding Zhong's enthusiasm. However, when he heard Ding Zhong's words, he realized Ding Zhong had misunderstood. Ding Zhong must have misunderstood him as a genius disciple recommended by the Sanctum leader of the Black Turtle Sanctum. Due to this reason, Ding Zhong was so friendly to him. "Elder Ding Zhong, I think you've misunderstood. I don't have the recommendation document," Duan Lingtian said. "You don't have the recommendation document?" Duan Lingtian's words not only stunned Ding Zhong, but even the two young men standing near Ding Zhong were stunned as well. After a while, Ding Zhong regained his senses and continued to say, "Little brother, stop joking. The fact that you're here before the Saint Land's assessment shows that you're qualified to enter the Saint Land in advance and become a Saint Land disciple. If you're not recommended by Sanctum leader Wu, don't tell me you've also successfully comprehended the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier?" When Ding Zhong reached the end of his sentence, he began to laugh. Even he felt it was unrealistic. The other two young men nodded as well. They also felt it was unrealistic. Upon seeing this, Duan Lingtian did not say anything. Instead, he directly cast the divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, as a response to Ding Zhong. Whoosh. At this moment, the Sun Saint energy on Duan Lingtian's body suddenly rose before it spread out and transformed into the silhouette of a gigantic black turtle that shielded him. When Ding Zhong and the other two saw this, their expressions froze immediately. At this moment, they felt as though thousands of horses were galloping wildly in their hearts. How was this possible? In less than half a month before the St. Lands assessment began, two Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples had arrived. Both of them had successfully comprehended the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier? Since when was it so easy to comprehend the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier? Was it still the #1 defensive divine ability of Zoroastrianism? Ding Zhong was stunned. The two young men were stunned as well. "Elder Ding Zhong, can you register me now?" It was only when Duan Lingtian spoke that Ding Zhong snapped out of his daze. "Yes, of course." At this moment, a smile appeared on Ding Zhong's face again. Someone who could successfully comprehend the #1 defensive divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, from Zoroastrianism was also worthy of his respect. As long as such a person's martial Tao innate talent was not too bad, his future achievements would not be inferior to his. "Little brother, what's your name?" Before registering Duan Lingtian, Ding Zhong asked as a routine. Although it was just a routine, there was a warm smile on his face from the beginning to the end. It gave Duan Lingtian a feeling of being at home. Duan Lingtian. Chapter 1986. The name, Duan Lingtian, was not unfamiliar to Ding Zhong. Although this name had become famous in the fire worship sect recently, it did not mean that it would be impossible for the fire worship sect to become famous. However, since the owner of this name only had a yellow innate spiritual root, he did not take this person seriously. He had even told more than one person. Duan Lingtian was just a mediocre person who got lucky. A mediocre person would always be a mediocre person. Even if he was lucky for a moment, he would still be a pile of mud that couldn't be supported. So what if he was talented in divine ability? Without the support of martial arts talent, it would be difficult for one to achieve great things. So what if he could transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior? A mediocre person with a yellow innate spiritual root would not be treated as an 8-clawed divine dragon even if he was a 9-clawed dragon warrior. The 8-clawed divine dragon was not only a symbol of status, but also a symbol of strength. In fact, the reason why the eight-clawed divine dragon had such a lofty status among dragons was because of their martial talent and strength. In Ding Zhong's opinion, these were also things that the Duanling Tian did not have. Among the dragons, only the strong were respected. The weak would never be recognized by the dragons. So you're Duanling Tian. In the blink of an eye, Ding Zhong's expression changed. The smile on his face was no longer there, replaced by indifference. Although he had heard that Duanling Tian's strength was extremely close to the Saint Celestial stage, he still did not take Duanling Tian seriously. In his opinion, that was the limit of the Duanling Tian. After all, Duanling Tian only possessed a yellow innate spiritual root. His cultivation base was already at the peak of the exemplary saint stage. Even if he managed to break through to the quintessential saint stage, it would still be difficult for him. At the end of their lives, their strength would at most be comparable to the first form of the Saint Celestial stage. Such an existence was simply not worthy of Ding Zhong taking the initiative to curry favor with. Seeing the sudden change in Ding Zhong's expression, Duanling Tian was at a loss. A moment later, as if realizing something, Duanling Tian shrugged. The corners of his mouth curled into a faint helpless smile, but in the end, he did not say anything. Duanling Tian was not a fool. He could roughly guess the reason why Ding Zhong had tried to curry favor with him. Ding Zhong must have felt that his future was limitless and wanted to seize the opportunity to curry favor with him in advance so that there wouldn't be any opportunities in the future. And now, Ding Zhong's change in expression came from him saying his name. Suddenly he realized something. At this moment in Ding Zhong's eyes, he was no longer worth fawning over. As for the reason, there were only two reasons. First, Ding Zhong, like most people in Zoroastrianism, thought he only possessed a yellow innate spiritual root. Secondly, Ding Zhong did not think that he could defeat Lien. He felt that he would die in the middle of the battle. No matter what the reason was, there was a common fact. Currently, in Ding Zhong's eyes, he had lost the value of fawning over him. It was precisely because of this that Ding Zhong's attitude towards him had undergone such a drastic change. How realistic! Although Duanling Tian had seen many similar situations along the way, he could not help but shake his head and sigh when he saw this. Naturally, he did not care. It did not matter if Ding Zhong's attitude toward him was friendly or not. It was fine as long as Ding Zhong obediently completed the registration process for him and did not cause any trouble for him. Fortunately, although Ding Zhong was snobbish, he did not make things difficult for Duanling Tian during the registration process. After Ding Zhong finished registering Duanling Tian, he looked at the young man on his left and said, "Bring him a few Saint Lan disciples' uniforms." As soon as he finished speaking, he looked at the other young man and said, "Prepare a Saint Lan disciple's identity token and a crystal card to store contribution points for him." Yes. The two young men were Ding Zhong's assistants at the Saint Lan disciple registration office. Naturally, they would carry out Ding Zhong's orders unconditionally. Perhaps it was due to Ding Zhong's influence, when they looked at Duanling Tian from the corner of their eyes, there was a hint of disdain in their eyes. Duanling Tian acted as if he didn't see this. Everyone had their own way of living. Since they were snobbish, he would let them be as long as they did not cause him any harm. A Saint Lan disciple has an identity token? Duanling Tian's eyes gleamed. When he was in the Black Turtle Sanctum, he only had the Black Turtle Sanctum's uniform and did not have an identity token. It seemed like the treatment of a Saint Lan disciple was indeed extraordinary. Also, the crystal card to store contribution points must be the same as the crystal card used to store merit points in the Moon Illumination sect. The contribution points inside must be used to exchange for some precious items in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. It was not difficult for Duanling Tian to figure this out. Soon after, the two young men prepared a few sets of Saint Lan disciples' uniform, an identity token, and a crystal card for Duanling Tian. "Thank you for the trouble." Faced with Ding Zhong and the other two's cold gazes, Duanling Tian politely nodded at them before he turned around and left. After he left, Duanling Tian suddenly recalled something. He did not know where the Saint Lan disciples lived. Duanling Tian instantly wanted to return. However, when he recalled how the three of them looked at him coldly before he left, he dismissed the idea of going back. "Forget it, I won't look for them. I'll just ask any disciple from the Saint Land outside." The moment Duanling Tian thought of this, he left. "Elder Ding Zhong, don't you think it's inappropriate for us to not send him to the Saint Land disciples' residence? After all, it's his first time in the Saint Land." Not long after Duanling Tian left, one of the young men looked at Ding Zhong and asked, "What? Don't tell me you want to curry favor with him?" Ding Zhong smiled disdainfully as he said disdainfully, no matter how high Duan Lingtian's innate talent is in comprehending divine abilities, he won't have any great achievements in the future. After all, his innate spiritual root is only a yellow innate spiritual root. Put aside Ding Zhong's disdain, Duan Lingtian had also successfully stopped a Saint Lan disciple and asked for the location of the Saint Lan disciple's residence. Thank you, senior brother. After obtaining the information he wanted, Duan Lingtian was, naturally, overjoyed. He quickly thanked the Saint Lan disciple whom he stopped. The Saint Lan disciple standing before Duan Lingtian was a tall and well-built middle-aged man. He had a simple and honest appearance. He quickly waved his hand in the face of Duan Lingtian's gratitude. We're all brothers from the same sect. You're welcome. Based on his words and actions, the middle-aged man had the bearing of an honest person. Junior brother. When the middle-aged man saw Duan Lingtian was about to leave, he called out to him. Duan Lingtian looked at the middle-aged man with a puzzled expression on his face. Why don't I send you there? The middle-aged man asked. No need. Duan Lingtian knew the middle-aged man was not going in the same direction. He could tell from the direction the middle-aged man was heading. For this reason, he immediately rejected the middle-aged man's good intentions. You really don't need it? The middle-aged man was still hesitant. I really don't need it. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. Then, he no longer bothered with the middle-aged man and continued to walk in the direction the middle-aged man had pointed out. Guanxiu, do you know that Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple? At the same time, a young man who was passing by approached the middle-aged man and asked curiously. Based on the young man's attire, it was obvious he was also a Saint Lan disciple. No, I don't. The middle-aged man Guanxiu shook his head and smiled innocently. He must be a new disciple who has just arrived at our Saint Land. He doesn't know the way to our Saint Lan's disciple's residence, so he came to ask me. Should be? He must be a new disciple who has just arrived at our Saint Land. The young man said confidently. Moreover, he must have been personally recommended by the sanctum leader of the Black Turtle Sanctum. The Saint Land assessment for the Four Symbols Sanctum's disciples will only begin after some time. Since he's here now, he must have extraordinary innate talent. Otherwise, it's impossible for him to be recommended by the sanctum leader of the Black Turtle Sanctum. Personally recommended by the sanctum leader of the Black Turtle Sanctum? So amazing? Guanxiu was a little slow. Although he noticed Duan Lingtian was wearing the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple's attire, he did not think too much about it. I really have to hand it to you. How can you miss such a good opportunity? If it were me, I'd want to get to know such a genius as well. You, on the other hand, didn't even show him the way when he asked for directions. Otherwise, you'll definitely benefit greatly if you get to know him. The young man looked at Guanxiu and said in disappointment. Are you still my friend when you're so calculative? However, Guanxiu was non-committal when he heard the young man's words. Guanxiu, hurry up and chase after him. There's still a chance. The young man glanced at the figure that was about to disappear from his sight before looking at Guanxiu and reminding him. I'm not going. Guanxiu was very stubborn. I won't make friends with calculative thoughts. A friend who makes friends with such a method isn't a friend at all. After Guanxiu finished speaking, he left. You're really a piece of wood. You can't carve rotten wood. The young man could not help but curse when he saw Guanxiu did not appreciate his kindness. He had a look of disappointment on his face. About 15 minutes later, Duan Lingtian arrived at the residence of the Saint Lan's disciple. The residence of the Saint Lan's disciple was not divided into levels. Due to this reason there was no competition. The residence of the Saint Lan's disciple was located in a vast valley. The residence of the Saint Lan's disciple was a small courtyard built around the valley. There were flowers, grass, a stone table and a few stone stools in the small courtyard. Behind the small courtyard was an independent stone house. Chapter 1987. Not only were there no levels in the residence of the Saint Lan's disciples, but there were also 3,000 courtyards for the Saint Lan's disciples to stay in. The 3,000 courtyards were located in the vast valley. They were like terraced fields. However, due to the vastness of the valley, it did not feel crowded even though there were 3,000 courtyards. Currently, there were only 2,000 Saint Lan disciples in the Zoroastrianism. Even if all the Saint Lan disciples were to stay here, there would still be plenty of empty rooms. The cultivation environment here is similar to the Primus house in the Four Symbols Sanctum's First Mind's punishment zone. Although there are also 10 spirit gathering formations set up here, the amount of heaven and earth spirit energy here is even more abundant than the Primus houses. After finding an empty courtyard and entering the room, Duan Lingtian discovered that the heaven and earth spirit energy here was much more abundant than the Primus house. The density of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the room was even higher than that of the primeval house he used to live in. It must be because this place is close to the quasi-celestial grade mine. It was not difficult for Duan Lingtian to figure this out. I hope I can comprehend the third stage of the Sovereign Heart Sword in one go this time. After closing the door, Duan Lingtian took out the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda and entered the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. He immersed himself in comprehending the Supreme Sword Tao Mental Cultivation Method, the Sovereign Heart Sword. At this moment, Duan Lingtian's cultivation base had reached a bottleneck. It was impossible for him to break through to the early exemplary saint stage in such a short time. Moreover, he had already mastered 4 high-grade divine abilities. He was only lacking in mastering the divine abilities. For this reason, Duan Lingtian began to focus on comprehending the Sovereign Heart Sword. Moreover, he was only one step away from entering the 3rd stage of the Sovereign Heart Sword. That person earlier seemed to be wearing the uniform of a Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple? Duan Lingtian was unaware that some of the Saint Lan disciples had noticed him when he arrived at the residence of the Saint Lan disciples and found a courtyard to stay in. Naturally, these Saint Lan disciples did not know his identity. A day later, a shocking piece of news spread throughout the holy land of Zoroastrianism. The Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple, Duan Lingtian, had successfully comprehended the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier. He was pardoned by the 4 Symbols Sanctum's first mind's punishment zone and came to the Saint Lan to officially become a Saint Lan disciple. This news immediately caused quite a stir in the Holy Land. Duan Lingtian? That 9-clawed dragon warrior? That Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple who offended the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder Lien and the Northern Plethora sect's 5th Elder Yang Chong as soon as he arrived at the Zoroastrianism sect? That troublemaker? It said that although his innate spiritual root is only a yellow innate spiritual root, since he's a 9-clawed dragon warrior and has mastered 3 high-grade divine abilities, his battle strength is comparable to a Saint Celestial. Now that he has successfully comprehended the number 1 defensive divine ability of the Zoroastrianism, the Black Turtle's Barrier, does this mean his strength is comparable to a powerhouse at the first form of the Saint Celestial stage? Impossible. The Black Turtle's Barrier is only a defensive divine ability. It only grants him defensive strength. It doesn't increase his offensive strength at all. For this reason, his defensive strength is only comparable to a powerhouse at the first form of the Saint Celestial stage. As for offensive strength, he's definitely inferior to a powerhouse at the first form of the Saint Celestial stage. I heard his cultivation base is already at the peak of the exemplary saint stage. Unfortunately, his innate spiritual root is only a yellow innate spiritual root. It's hard to say if he'll be able to break through to the quintessential saint stage or not. Even if he breaks through, it'll be difficult for him to achieve anything with his innate talent. The Saint Lan's Central Square and the residences of the Saint Lan's disciples were filled with similar discussions. It seems like the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple who stayed in the courtyard yesterday is Duan Lingtian. Many of the Saint Lan's disciples were looking at the courtyard where Duan Lingtian stayed. These Saint Lan's disciples had witnessed Duan Lingtian's arrival and stay in the Saint Lan's disciples' residence yesterday. 1 spread to 10, 10 spread to 100. Soon after, most of the Saint Lan's disciples learned about Duan Lingtian's residence. Junior brother Lingtian has also comprehended the Black Turtle's Barrier? Today, Sunda had just come out of his room and was about to go to the reward palace in the central square to see if there were any missions that he could complete to earn contribution points. However, he heard many people whispering in the Saint Lan's disciples' residence. He instantly learned that Duan Lingtian had come to the Saint Lan and had become a Saint Lan's disciple. Moreover, Duan Lingtian's situation was similar to his. Both of them had successfully comprehended the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier. I can't believe junior brother Lingtian and I have both entered the Saint Lan and become a Saint Lan's disciple in less than half a month. Moreover, it's because both of us have successfully comprehended the Black Turtle's Barrier. I'm afraid everyone in the Black Turtle Sanctum has gone crazy because of this news, right? Sunda muttered to himself with an expression of shock on his face. This Sunda was none other than Sunda whose Primus house was snatched away by Duan Lingtian in the 4 Symbols Sanctum's first mind's punishment zone. Due to Duan Lingtian's challenge, he was pressured into comprehending the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's barrier. Moreover, he was granted amnesty by the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine. After leaving the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine, he came to the Saint Land and became a Saint Land's disciple. It was just as Sunda had expected. Currently, the Black Turtle Sanctum was not calm. Perhaps the words "not calm" were not enough to describe the current Black Turtle Sanctum. The Black Turtle Sanctum was in an uproar because of the news from the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine and the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. Duan Ling Tian has successfully comprehended the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's barrier, and has been granted amnesty by the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine. He has entered the Saint Land and become a Saint Land's disciple? Heavens, was this real or fake? In less than half a month, 2 disciples from our Black Turtle Sanctum have successfully comprehended the divine ability, the Black Turtle's barrier? Not only is the Black Turtle's barrier our Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, but it's also the #1 defensive divine ability in Zoroastrianism. The difficulty of successfully comprehending this divine ability is publicly acknowledged to be much higher than the Azure Dragon Sanctum, the Vermilion Bird Sanctum, and the White Tiger Sanctum. However, this divine ability that is so difficult to successfully comprehend has been successfully comprehended by 2 people in just half a month? Senior brother Duan Lingtan is really monstrous. Indeed. Naturally, if he doesn't have a yellow innate spiritual root, even if he only has a green innate spiritual root, his future would be limitless. However, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for him to improve his strength now. That's right. His innate spiritual root is too much of a hindrance to him. Initially, I was wondering why a 9-clawed dragon warrior like him would be comparable to an 8-clawed divine dragon if he joined the dragons. Why would he come to Zoroastrianism? Now that I think about it, it must be because he only has a yellow innate spiritual root. With such an innate talent, why would those arrogant dragons treat him with respect like an 8-clawed divine dragon? I think so too. I think he must have been ostracized by the members of the dragons and can't stay in the dragons anymore. That's why he came to Zoroastrianism. The Black Turtle Sanctum was bustling with noise and excitement. The topic of discussion revolved around Duan Ling Tian. For a time, the news of Duan Ling Tian comprehending the Black Turtle's barrier, the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, and entering the Saint Land had spread throughout the Four Symbols Sanctums. It caused quite a commotion in the Four Symbols Sanctums. Bang! In a spacious mansion on the east side of the Black Turtle Sanctum, a loud noise suddenly sounded. An old man had raised his hand and smashed the stone table that had just been replaced into dust. This old man was none other than the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder, Lian. How's this possible? He actually comprehended the Black Turtle's barrier and left the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine to enter the Saint Land. While muttering to himself, Lian's expression turned extremely ugly. Not even in his wildest dreams did he expect this. Duan Ling Tian, whom he wished he could kill, had also successfully comprehended the Black Turtle's barrier, the most treasured divine ability in the Black Turtle Sanctum, just like Sunda. Not only that, but he had also entered the Saint Land and became a disciple of the Saint Land. It was also because of this news that Lian felt an unprecedented sense of crisis. In the eyes of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples, Duan Ling Tian only possessed a yellow innate spiritual root. Even if Duan Ling Tian was a 9-clawed dragon warrior and had mastered 4 different types of high-grade divine abilities, his future achievements would still be limited. However, Lian knew something. Duan Ling Tian did not possess a yellow innate spiritual root, but a blue innate spiritual root. In order to verify this news, his eldest direct disciple, Wei He, had been executed by the Saint Land's Enforcement Hall. After a long while, Lian raised his head with a dark expression on his face. His eyes were cold as he looked in the direction of the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. He muttered to himself, "It's good that he's in the Saint Land. This way Yang Wen and my other 2 direct disciples can deal with him as well." Yang Wen was the elder brother of Yang Wu, whom Duan Ling Tian had killed when he had just arrived at the fire worship sect's Black Turtle Sanctum. He was also the eldest son of Yang Chong, the 5th elder of the Northern Plethora sect. Yang Wen had entered the Saint Land many years ago and became a disciple of the Saint Land. Currently, his cultivation base had already broken through to the first form of the Saint Celestial stage, making him a true disciple of the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. Yang Wen was furious when he found out his younger brother had been killed. He could not wait to kill Duan Ling Tian in the Black Turtle Sanctum. Although he was afraid of the rules of Zoroastrianism and could not kill Duan Ling Tian, he could not wait to beat Duan Ling Tian up and make Duan Ling Tian suffer a fate worse than death. However, Zoroastrianism had its own rules. Saint Land disciples were not allowed to enter the four symbol sanctums without the permission of a golden flame elder. Otherwise, it would be considered a violation of the sect's rules and would be severely punished. Yang Wen must have received news that Duan Lingtian has arrived in the Saint Land, right? Chapter 1988. In the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism, there were two types of Saint Land disciples. The first type was the elite disciples. All the fire worship sect's disciples who could enter the Saint Land from the four symbols sanctums and become Saint Land disciples were all elite disciples. For this reason, all the Saint Land disciples in the Zoroastrianism Saint Land were elite disciples of Zoroastrianism. The second type was the true disciples. Unlike the wide range of elite disciples, there were not many true disciples in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. There were only slightly over 170 true disciples. Most of these true disciples were powerhouses who had entered the Saint Celestial stage. The rest of them were monstrous geniuses with indigo innate spiritual roots. Those with indigo innate spiritual roots would definitely be able to enter the Saint Celestial stage and become a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse. Let alone those with indigo innate spiritual roots. There were only 10 people with indigo innate spiritual roots in the Zoroastrianism. Some of them were older powerhouses of Zoroastrianism. For example, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism possessed an indigo innate spiritual root. Two of the three great guardians of Zoroastrianism and one of the vice sect leaders also possessed indigo innate spiritual roots. Although the other guardian and vice sect leader only possessed indigo innate spiritual roots, their innate spiritual roots were dark blue. It was almost as good as an indigo innate spiritual root. It was due to these monstrous geniuses with indigo innate spiritual roots that they had the privilege of becoming true disciples in the Saint Celestial stage in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. Although their cultivation base had to be at the Divine Saint stage or above, for monstrous geniuses with indigo innate spiritual roots, breaking through to the Divine Saint stage was as easy as eating and sleeping. It was not difficult at all. In the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism, the elite disciples lived in a vast valley that the Saint Land had built for them on the Saint Island. There were 3,000 small courtyards there for them to live in. Moreover, the cultivation environment there was much better than the Primus rooms in the four symbols sanctums. As for the true disciples, they did not live on the Saint Island. They lived on the independent floating islands around the Saint Island. Each of them occupied an island and each had an independent and spacious mansion. There was also a large open space in front of the mansion where they could practice their martial arts and divine abilities. Creak, a soft sound came from one of the independent floating islands. In the spacious mansion above, a young man pushed open the door of one of the rooms and walked out. This young man was tall and had a taut face. It was hard to tell if he was happy or angry. If Duan Lingtian was here and saw this young man, he would definitely notice that this young man was 50 to 60% similar to Jianghu whom he had killed in the past. This young man was none other than Jianghu's older brother Yang Wen. I'm still lacking a little. I should be able to successfully comprehend it the next time I enter seclusion. Yang Wen muttered to himself after he walked out of the room. As a true disciple of the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism, not only had his cultivation base broken through to the first form of the Saint Celestial stage, but he had also mastered a high-grade movement divine ability. In the past few years, apart from cultivating, he had also been focusing on comprehending a high-grade offensive divine ability. It was only during this closed-door cultivation that he finally saw the light of success. Unfortunately, little Wu won't be able to see me master the second high-grade divine ability. Yang Wen's expression turned grave when he thought of his younger brother, Yang Wu, who regarded him as an idol. Although 90% of the people in the four symbols sanctums of Zoroastrianism who knew the cause of Yang Wu's death felt that Yang Wu had brought it upon himself, he had brought it upon himself. However, as Yang Wu's elder brother, he did not think so. In his opinion, his younger brother was always right. Even if his younger brother had done something that angered the heavens as his elder brother, he would still support him to the end regardless of whether it was right or wrong. Due to this reason, Yang Wen treated Duan Lingtian as his sworn enemy when he learned about Yang Wu's death. He would not rest until he was dead. Duan Lingtian has come to the Saint Land? Yang Wen heard the conversation of a few Saint Land disciples when he was about to leave the independent floating island and enter the Saint Island and arrive at the central square. Based on the conversation, he learned that Yang Wu's younger brother, was Duan Lingtian. Not only that, but he also learned that the person who killed his younger brother, Yang Wu, had come to the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism and had become a Saint Land disciple. He actually managed to comprehend the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier? A hint of jealousy flashed in Yang Wen's eyes when he learned the reason why Duanling Tian was able to come to the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism to become a Saint Land disciple. Yang Wu was also from the Black Turtle Sanctum, one of the four symbol sanctums. He had tried to comprehend the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier. However, after so many years he still did not manage to comprehend it. In the end, he could only choose to give up and began to comprehend another high-grade movement divine ability. It was the high-grade movement divine ability that he had already mastered. Even if I can't kill or cripple you openly, I'll still let you taste a fate worse than death. Yang Wen's eyes flashed coldly as he left the central square in a flash. He made his way to the Saint Land disciples' residence. As his figure moved, his aura was also very aggressive, giving people a feeling that he had come with ill intentions. He was not Lien. As a Black Turtle Sanctum Silver Flame Elder, it was only natural that he would not attack a Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple, let alone torture him to the point where he would wish he was dead. This was because not only was he bullying the weak, but it would also have a huge impact. If news of this spread out, Zoroastrianism would definitely be humiliated. Moreover, many martial Dao geniuses who originally intended to join Zoroastrianism might choose to join the other two great sects instead. This would undoubtedly be a huge loss to Zoroastrianism. For this reason, Liam was worried the high-ranking Zoroastrianism official would kick him out of Zoroastrianism in a fit of rage. That said, while Liam was worried, Yang Wen was not. He was not a Zoroastrianism elder. He was only a Zoroastrianism disciple just like Duanling Tian. He had killed Duanling Tian in a fit of rage to avenge his younger brother. Even if news of this spread out, it would not affect Zoroastrianism's reputation at all. Not only that, as long as he did not cripple or kill Duanling Tian, it would not be considered a violation of Zoroastrianism's rules. In fact, this could be considered a loophole in Zoroastrianism's rules. However, this loophole had always been there. It was as though it was intentionally left behind. Due to this loophole, there would be people who would be tortured to the point where they would wish they were dead every once in a while. These people who were tortured to the point where they would wish they were dead would work hard in the end. Some of them managed to avenge their younger brother in the end. Some of them did not manage to avenge their younger brother in the end. However, when they looked back, they realized they had improved a lot during this period of time. There were losses and gains, but the gains were greater than the losses. One could say that this loophole in Zoroastrianism's rules had motivated many Zoroastrianism disciples to a certain extent. Naturally, in Zoroastrianism, unless one really hated someone to death and was unwilling to sign a life and death pact with them, one would not torture another person to the point where they would wish they were dead. Its senior brother Yang Wen. When Yang Wen's figure appeared at the residence of the Saint Land disciples in the vast valley, he immediately attracted the attention of many Saint Land disciples. Yang Wen was also a Saint Land disciple who used to live here. However, due to the fact that his cultivation base had broken through to the Saint Celestial stage and he had become a true disciple, he had left this place. However, there were still many Saint Land disciples who remembered him. Moreover, they recognized him with just a glance. Whoosh! Yang Wen's figure flashed, and he arrived at the side of the valley in just a few moments. There were 5 disciples of the Holy Lands gathered together. They were originally chatting, but their attention was drawn over by Yang Wen's arrival. When they saw Yang Wen standing next to them, they immediately felt a little awkward. Senior brother Yang Wen. Senior brother Yang Wen. The 5 Saint Land disciples felt a little awkward and nervous when they faced a true disciple like Yang Wen. Where's Duanling Tian staying? Yang Wen glanced at the 5 Saint Land disciples with an arrogant expression on his face. He asked as he looked at the 5 of them like a superior looking at a subordinate. Upon hearing Yang Wen's words, the 5 Saint Land disciples realized Yang Wen was not targeting them. For a moment, they all breathed a sigh of relief and pointed in one direction. Yang Wen looked in the direction the 5 Saint Land disciples were pointing at. His gaze quickly locked onto a small courtyard, and he immediately flew over. However, when he arrived outside the small courtyard, he did not force his way in. Instead, he sat cross-legged in the air and closed his eyes to meditate. As he cultivated, he waited patiently. It was not that he did not want to force his way in. However, if he forced his way in, he might not be able to bear the consequences. Firstly, the stone houses behind the small courtyards of the Saint Land disciples' residences were soundproof. Moreover, there was a formation set up to block the probing of divine consciousness. If one wanted to wake the person inside, apart from pushing open the door and entering, The only other way was to destroy the formation that blocked the divine consciousness or destroy the stone house. However, if one did that, there was a high possibility that the person inside would suffer from chi deviation. According to the rules of Zoroastrianism, those who disturbed the cultivation of their fellow disciples and caused them to suffer from chi deviation would be sentenced to death by the Saint Land Enforcement Hall, regardless of their innate talent or identity. Naturally, Yang Wen wanted Duan Ling Tian to suffer from chi deviation. However, he felt it was not worth it if he had to sacrifice his life for this. Otherwise, he would not have come here to torture Duan Ling Tian until he wished he was dead instead of killing Duan Ling Tian. Chapter 1989. Naturally, even if Yang Wen did not kill Duan Ling Tian now, it did not mean he would not kill Duan Ling Tian in the future. The reason he did not kill Duan Ling Tian now was because he was afraid of Zoroastrianism. In the future, as long as he had the chance, he would definitely kill Duan Ling Tian to avenge his younger brother, Yang Wu. What's senior brother Yang Wen doing? It seems like he's waiting for Duan Ling Tian to come out. At the same time, Yang Wen's actions had attracted the attention of many Saint Lan disciples. They knew Yang Wen had come for the new disciple, Duan Ling Tian. However, they could tell Yang Wen was not here to have a heart-to-heart talk with Duan Ling Tian. This could be seen from his aggressive manner. At this moment, the Saint Lan disciples present on the scene were certain Yang Wen did not come with good intentions. There's enmity between Duan Ling Tian and senior brother Yang Wen? I've never heard of it before. I've never heard of it before as well. Moreover, one of them was in the Saint Land while the other was in the Four Symbols Sanctums. They don't seem to have any interactions, right? What's going on? Many Saint Lan disciples were puzzled when they saw Yang Wen had come with ill intentions. Confusion could be seen in their eyes. Really? All of you don't know there's enmity between senior brother Yang Wen and Duan Ling Tian? At this moment, a Saint Lan disciple asked in surprise. It was as though he had heard something shocking. What? You know about it? The group of Saint Lan disciples immediately shifted their attention to this Saint Lan disciple. Do all of you still remember how Duan Ling Tian became enemies with the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder, Lian, when he first arrived at the Black Turtle Sanctum of Zoroastrianism? The Saint Lan disciple kept them in suspense as he asked this question. Of course. As soon as the Saint Lan disciple finished speaking, another Saint Lan disciple nodded and said, "It's because Duan Ling Tian killed the son of Elder Lian's best friend." The other Saint Lan disciples nodded as well. They had heard of this matter before. For this reason they admired Duan Ling Tian very much. After all, no one would dare to openly go against the Silver Flame Elder of Zoroastrianism when they had just joined Zoroastrianism. Since all of you know about this matter, then do all of you know who Elder Lian's best friend is? The first disciple asked again. Oh, don't keep me guessing. Tell me who it is. Exactly. Do you believe that we will beat you up if you continue to keep us in suspense? Many of the Holy Land's disciples were enraged when they saw the Holy Land's disciple trying to keep them in suspense again. All of them glared at him as though they would beat him up if he dared to keep them in suspense again. Although the other Holy Land's disciples didn't do the same, their gazes towards this Holy Land's disciple were filled with hostility. It's Yang Chong. At this moment, another Holy Land disciple muttered to himself for a moment before exclaiming in surprise. It was obvious that he had just remembered. Yang Chong? I remember now. It's Yang Chong. I remember now. The person Duan Ling Tian killed that day was Yang Wu, the son of Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect. When the first Holy Land's disciple spoke, another two Holy Land's disciples finally realized what was going on. Don't tell me senior brother Yang Wen is related to Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect? At the same time, the Holy Land's disciples present on the scene began to speculate. At the same time, most of the Holy Land's disciples shifted their attention to the Holy Land's disciple who liked to keep them in suspense. All of them wanted to get an answer from him. Since this Holy Land's disciple had angered everyone earlier, he did not dare to go overboard this time. He said bluntly, "Senior brother Yang Wen is the eldest son of Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect. As for Yang Wu who was killed by Duan Ling Tian, he's senior brother Yang Wen's younger brother." Whoosh. As soon as the Holy Land's disciple finished speaking, the entire place fell silent. However, a commotion broke out again in the next moment. Senior brother Yang Wen is the son of Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect? Heavens, there's such a thing? I've never heard of it before. Me too. I've never heard of it before. After learning that the true disciple of their Zoroastrianism Holy Land, Yang Wen, was actually the son of Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect. The Saint Lan's disciples present on the scene were shocked. In fact, they had never heard of Yang Wen being the son of Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect, before this. Senior brother Yang Wen really hid his identity well. He's actually the son of the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect. In the past, I've only heard that senior brother Yang Wen is very arrogant. However, I've finally seen it for myself now. To think that senior brother Yang Wen is so arrogant that he's unwilling to use his father's name to intimidate others. Many Holy Land's disciples were filled with emotions when they learned of Yang Wen's identity. If that's the case, then it's easy to explain why senior brother Yang Wen targeted Duan Lingtian. After all, Duan Lingtian killed his younger brother. It'd be strange if he's willing to let the matter rest. That's right. Perhaps senior brother Yang Wen doesn't dare to kill Duan Lingtian or cripple him because of the sect's rules. However, he still dares to torture Duan Lingtian. After all, it's allowed by the sect's rules. Then doesn't this mean Duan Lingtian is going to be in trouble? Of course. Although he's quite strong and has few opponents below the Saint Celestial stage, his strength is nothing compared to senior brother Yang Wen, who's at the first form of the Saint Celestial stage. That's right. There's a huge gap between the Saint Celestial stage and the quintessential Saint stage. Duan Lingtian's strength is no match for senior brother Yang Wen. It seems like even if Duan Lingtian doesn't die or become crippled, he's going to lose a layer of skin. After learning about Yang Wen's identity, the group of Saint Lan disciples was no longer surprised by Yang Wen's hostility toward Duan Lingtian. Instead, they began to sympathize with Duan Lingtian. Although they had heard that Duan Lingtian's strength was very close to the Saint Celestial stage, it was still not close to the Saint Celestial stage. However, even if he was very close to the Saint Celestial stage, he was still not at the Saint Celestial stage. Due to this reason, in their opinion, it was impossible for Duan Lingtian to be a match for Yang Wen. He was destined to be tortured by Yang Wen. Due to the good soundproofing of the stone house behind the Saint Lan disciples' residence, Duan Lingtian, who was in the fourth level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, did not notice anything at all. He did not know there was a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse waiting for him outside. At this moment, Duan Lingtian was standing in the air of the fourth level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. He was as straight as a javelin. Duan Lingtian stood there motionlessly like a statue. No one knew what he was doing. Time continued to pass by. A day went by. 2 days went by. After a month had passed, Duan Lingtian finally made a move. When Duan Lingtian raised his hand, a simple and unadorned 3-foot-long sword appeared in his hand. It was the Celestial Supreme Treasure, the Jasper Celestial Sword. At first glance, the Jasper Celestial Sword looked like an extremely ordinary sword. However, when Duan Lingtian held it in his hand and swung it, it emitted a terrifying aura as though it could destroy heaven and earth. A semi-transparent sword energy flashed around the Jasper Celestial Sword as it emitted an oppressive aura. With the sword in my heart, the shadow of the sword follows my heart. Controlling the sword with my heart, the heart of the sword is illuminated, the heart and sword become one. At some point, Duan Lingtian began to mutter to himself without opening his eyes. No one knew who he was talking to. He kept repeating the names of the 5 stages of the Sovereign Heart Sword as though he did not know the meaning of exhaustion. He did not stop for a long time. Time continued to pass by. Another month had passed. After swinging the Jasper Celestial Sword once a month ago, Duan Lingtian, who had not made a move since then, began to make a move again. A month ago he swung the Jasper Celestial Sword horizontally. However, this time he swung the Jasper Celestial Sword vertically and did not make a move after that. In just a blink of an eye, another month had passed. However, this time, Duan Lingtian still did not make a move. He stood there with the Jasper Celestial Sword in his hand as though he was a statue of a sword cultivator. What a powerful sword chi! Unknowingly, Elder Hua's figure appeared on the 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. His eyes landed on Duan Lingtian, who was hovering in the air with a sword in his hand. His eyes narrowed as shock filled his face. Duan Lingtian stood there with the sword in his hand and looked ordinary. However, Hua Lao could clearly sense that the sword chi emanating from Duan Lingtian was extremely powerful. It was so dense that it seemed as though it could tear through everything. However, if one looked closely, they would be able to see that. The air around Duan Lingtian's body was being divided into many parts. It was so dense that it seemed as though it was being affected by thousands of invisible forces. He's just one step away. I hope he can succeed. Once he takes this step, His achievement in the Sovereign Heart Sword is enough to reach the peak of offensive martial arts in this mundane realm. It's even stronger than most of the top offensive martial arts in this mundane realm. Hualao mumbled to himself. Then he disappeared from the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. It was as though he had never appeared. After Hualao left, the air around Duan Lingtian's body was further divided. On the 10th day, the air around Duan Lingtian's body was divided into thin threads. It was as though it was being cut into layers by an invisible force. Using the heart to wield the sword. I see. All of a sudden, Duan Lingtian opened his eyes that were as bright as the stars. The gaze in his eyes was like a sword gleam. At the same time, the air around Duan Lingtian's body that was divided began to gather again. It was no longer affected by the invisible force. In the next moment, Duan Lingtian let go of his hands. At the same time, the Jasper celestial sword in his hand turned into a sword ray and shot out. Its speed became faster and faster. In the end, it disappeared into the air as though it had become one with the air. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. However, when Duan Lingtian's Jasper celestial sword disappeared into the air, the sound of the sword whistling did not stop. It continued to resound in the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. After about 15 minutes, the sound of the sword whistling finally stopped. Chapter 1990. It's exactly 100 days. As Duan Lingtian put the Jasper celestial sword away, he muttered to himself for a moment before his eyes lit up. He recalled the time he spent comprehending the 3rd stage of the Sovereign Heart Sword, the sword wielding the heart. After all, he was not in closed-door cultivation. For this reason, Duan Lingtian had a sense of time. 100 days in the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda is equivalent to only 10 days outside. As Duan Lingtian muttered to himself, he raised his hand, and a crystal card appeared in his other hand. It was the crystal card he had obtained from the Saint Land's new disciple registration office. I wonder what I can exchange the contribution points in this crystal card for? I'll go to the central square to have a look. If there's anything I need, I'll see if there's any way I can earn contribution points. After he inserted the Sun Saint energy into the crystal card in his hand, it showed that he still had 100 contribution points. The 100 contribution points could be obtained by any 4 Symbols Sanctum's disciple who entered the Saint Land and became a Saint Land disciple. This was a welcome gift from the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism to every Saint Land disciple who had just entered the Saint Land. Since he decided to go to the central square of the Saint Island of Zoroastrianism's Saint Land, Duan Lingtian put the Jasper celestial sword and the crystal card into his spatial ring. Then he walked up to the heavy stone door and pushed it open. Rumble. The stone door slowly opened when it was pushed open. The sound it made was slightly muffled. When the stone door was pushed open, the true disciple Jianghu, who was sitting cross-legged in the air outside the small courtyard where the stone house was located, suddenly opened his eyes that were as bright as stars. A terrifying killing intent emanated from his body. Duan Lingtian has come out. Many Saint Land disciples heard the commotion and shifted their attention to the small courtyard where Duan Lingtian was staying. Most of these Saint Land disciples had a pitiful expression on their faces. In their opinion, since Duan Lingtian had come out, it meant that Duan Lingtian was in trouble. After all, the true disciple Jianghu had been waiting for him for 10 days. Looking at Jianghu's attitude, there was no way he would let him off so easily. Perhaps Jianghu did not dare to kill Duan Lingtian or cripple Duan Lingtian because he was afraid of the rules of Zoroastrianism, but he could torture Duan Lingtian and torture Duan Lingtian until he wished he was dead. Although Jianghu did not say what he planned to do to Duan Lingtian, the people present were able to deeply sense Jianghu's hatred for Duan Lingtian from the killing intent emitted from his body. The enmity of killing one's brother was not a small enmity. Before the stone door was completely pushed open, Duan Lingtian sensed a terrifying killing intent sweeping in from the outside, causing him to involuntarily become vigilant. Even the movement of pushing the door open had slowed down a little. At the same time, a series of discussions resonated from outside and entered Duan Lingtian's ears. Senior brother Jianghu is a true disciple. He's a powerhouse at the first form of the Saint Celestial stage, the Saint Origin form. It'll be easy for him to deal with Duan Lingtian. That's right. Duan Lingtian is destined to be in trouble today. It's useless even if he doesn't come out now because senior brother Jianghu is certain he's not in closed-door cultivation. Even if he destroys the stone house, he won't have to worry about chi deviation. So what if his strength is close to the Saint Celestial stage? So what if he has successfully comprehended the number 1 defensive divine ability of Zoroastrianism, The Black Turtle's barrier? So what if he has mastered 4 high-grade divine abilities? He's like a dog in front of a true Saint Celestial stage powerhouse. He can only blame himself for killing senior brother Yang Wen's younger brother, Yang Wu. Otherwise, why would senior brother Yang Wen make things difficult for him? The waves of discussion entered Duanling Tian's ears without missing a single word. It also allowed Duanling Tian to know who the killing intent from earlier came from. It was none other than the true disciple Yang Wen. I've long heard that Yang Chong, the 5th elder of the Northern Plethora sect, has 2 sons. His younger son Yang Wu was killed by me. His elder son is in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism and is a disciple of the Saint Land. However, I didn't expect Yang Chong's elder son Yang Wen is actually a true disciple whose cultivation base has entered the Saint Celestial stage. Duanling Tian was secretly surprised by this. Naturally, it was limited to being surprised. Duanling Tian's expression was as calm as usual. There was no hint of fear on his face at all. Even if Yang Wen doesn't dare to kill me because of the fire worship sect's rules and cripples me, I'm sure he'll do everything he can to torture me and make me wish I was dead. The moment Duanling Tian thought of this, his eyes flashed coldly. The rules of Zoroastrianism don't prohibit disciples from torturing and humiliating them. Perhaps, this is one of the ways Zoroastrianism motivates its disciples to work harder. Duanling Tian thought to himself at the same time. Rumble. The sound of the stone door being pushed resonated in the air again. Duanling Tian quickened his movements. In just a short while, the stone door was pushed open. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, including Yang Wen, after the stone door was pushed open, a tall and handsome young man appeared before their eyes. His calm appearance was deeply engraved in their hearts. Although the young man's clothes were exactly the same as theirs, it could not conceal the aura he exuded. It caused them to feel a sense of inferiority. "You're Duanling Tian?" Almost as soon as the young man stepped out of the stone house and entered the small courtyard, Yang Wen instantly stood up in the air and stared at the young man fiercely before he asked in an interrogating tone. Yang Wen's gaze was unusually sharp. If looks could kill, the young man before him would have been killed many times over. Yang Wen? The son of Northern Plethora sect's 5th elder Yang Chong? When Yang Wen stared at Duanling Tian fiercely and questioned him, Duanling Tian did not answer him. Instead he asked in return. When Yang Wen heard the young man before him was still so calm after learning his identity, he was certain the young man before him was indeed Duanling Tian. This was his first time seeing a Saint Land's disciple who dared to be so arrogant in front of a true disciple like him. No wonder you dare to go against Elder Lien. You're really arrogant. After confirming Duanling Tian's identity, the killing intent in Yang Wen's body intensified. His eyes shone fiercely. His gaze was as sharp as a knife as he stared at Duanling Tian. It was as though he wanted to cut Duanling Tian into pieces. However, do you think I'm Elder Lien? Do you think I won't make a move on you because of my identity? As soon as Yang Wen finished speaking, he did not wait for Duanling Tian's reply before he made his move. He was prepared to make a move on Duanling Tian. At the same time, the Saint Land's disciples who were watching felt their hearts in their mouths as they watched the scene unfold before their eyes. In their opinion, Duanling Tian was going to be in trouble. However, at this moment, Duanling Tian's words caused Yang Wen gang who was about to make a move to come to a halt. Moreover, the Saint Land disciples who were watching from the side were shocked and in disbelief. Yang Wen, you must be itching to kill me right now, right? Since that's the case, I'll give you a chance to kill me without violating the rules of Zoroastrianism. These were Duanling Tian's words. Yang Wen stopped moving when he heard these words. He asked in a deep voice, "What do you mean by that?" When Yang Wen asked this question, he couldn't help but frown. "What else can I mean?" Duanling Tian smiled indifferently when he saw the frowning Yang Wen. He said nonchalantly, "If I'm not mistaken, there should be a place in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism for disciples to sign a death pact, right? I'll give you a chance now. Lead the way." Duanling Tian's expression did not change when he reached the end of his sentence. Yang Wen, who was frowning, frowned slightly when he heard this. "Lead the way." Yang Wen's expression changed drastically when he heard Duanling Tian's words. After his expression changed greatly, there was another wave of change. He stared at Duanling Tian and remained silent for a long time. No one knew what he was thinking. Whoosh. At the same time, the Saint Land disciples who heard Duanling Tian's words finally regained their senses and broke into an uproar. Heavens! Based on Duanling Tian's words, it seems like he wants to have a death pact with senior brother Yang Wen? One of the Saint Land disciples who was watching could not help but exclaim. A death pact? With senior brother Yang Wen? Where did he get his courage from? Many Saint Lan disciples narrowed their eyes in disbelief. He's just a Saint Lan disciple who has just entered the Saint Land. Although he's quite strong, he can only show off among those below the Saint Celestial stage. It's impossible for him to be compared to a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse. Another Saint Lan disciple said confidently. Even if that's the case, why is he doing this? Look at how calm he is. It doesn't seem like he's seeking death. Some Saint Lan disciples felt something was amiss. Didn't you notice? Ever since Duan Ling Tian appeared, his expression did not change at all. From the beginning until the end, he had a calm expression on his face. It was as though he could remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. This is either a display of confidence or a deliberate act. One of the Saint Lan disciples speculated. Confidence? Don't tell me you think he can kill senior brother Yangwen? The Saint Lan disciple's words instantly aroused disdain from more than one Saint Lan disciple. Humph. He must be deliberately acting mysterious. More and more Saint Lan disciples said confidently. They did not think Duan Ling Tian was a match for Yang Wen, the true disciple whose cultivation base had already entered the Saint Celestial stage. Duan Ling Tian must be deliberately acting mysterious to scare Yang Wen away. Senior brother Yang Wen seems to be slightly hesitant when faced with his suggestion of a death pact. Don't tell me he really thinks he's weaker than Duan Ling Tian? Soon after, a Saint Lan disciple glanced at Yang Wen and noticed his hesitation. You're right. Chapter 1991. Duan Ling Tian really has some tricks up his sleeve. He's just deliberately mystifying him, and he managed to scare senior brother Yang Wen. Don't tell me senior brother Yang Wen really doesn't dare to accept Duan Ling Tian's suggestion for a death duel? The Saint Lan disciples whispered among themselves as they looked at Yang Wen. Their words were filled with mockery. They were mocking Yang Wen's cowardice. Deliberately mystifying? Naturally, Yang Wen had thought of the Saint Lan disciples' thoughts. However, he did not dare to accept Duan Ling Tian's suggestion so easily. He did not dare to take the risk. If he lost, it would be over for him. It seems like you don't dare to accept my life and death duel. At this moment, Duan Ling Tian finally spoke. He glanced at Yang Wen indifferently before he said disdainfully, a true disciple is nothing more than this. As soon as Duan Ling Tian finished speaking, he rose up into the air and prepared to leave. A true disciple is nothing more than this. Duan Ling Tian's disdainful words completely enraged Yang Wen. His expression turned grave as he snorted coldly. Duan Ling Tian, I agree to your suggestion. Do you really think I'll be frightened by you just because you're deliberately mystifying me? What a joke. In the blink of an eye, Yang Wen made his decision. If he did not dare to accept Duan Ling Tian's suggestion, it meant he was afraid of Duan Ling Tian, the person who killed his younger brother. If Duan Ling Tian was really stronger than him, it would be a wise decision for him to reject Duan Ling Tian's suggestion. On the other hand, if Duan Ling Tian was not as strong as him and was only trying to scare him, he would not dare to agree to Duan Ling Tian's suggestion. It would undoubtedly be very embarrassing. When Yang Wen heard Duan Ling Tian's disdainful words, he finally agreed to Duan Ling Tian's suggestion after weighing the pros and cons. In his opinion, Duan Ling Tian was most likely deliberately mystifying him. Agreed? Upon hearing Yang Wen's words, Duan Ling Tian was stunned for a moment. A surprised expression appeared on his calm face. When the group of Saint Lan's disciples saw this, it caused another round of discussion. Did you see that? Duan Ling Tian's expression changed, as if he didn't expect senior brother Yang Wen to agree to his suggestion. From this, it can be confirmed that he is indeed deliberately mystifying. Fortunately, senior brother Yang Wen agreed to his suggestion. Otherwise, not only would senior brother Yang Wen lose face for himself, he would also lose face for the core disciples. That's right. As a true disciple, he actually dared not agree to the life and death duel of an ordinary elite disciple. If this matter were to spread out, not only would he embarrass himself, but he would also embarrass the other true disciples. Fortunately, senior brother Yang Wen finally agreed to Duan Ling Tian's suggestion at the critical moment. This also disrupted Duan Ling Tian's scheme. The group of Holy Land disciples all felt that Yang Wen's decision was the right one. In their opinion, Duan Ling Tian was deliberately mystifying. As for the purpose of deliberately mystifying, it was, naturally, to scare Yang Wen into not agreeing to the life and death duel that he proposed. However, now that Yang Wen had agreed to it, it meant that Duan Ling Tian's scheme had been disrupted. At this moment, would Duan Ling Tian still dare to continue with his life and death duel? Senior brother Yang Wen's agreement to Duan Ling Tian's life and death duel is tantamount to checkmate Duan Ling Tian. Now that Duan Lingtian's expression has changed, I think he no longer dares to continue with his life and death duel. If he continues, he'll definitely die. At this moment, in the face of a choice between life and death, I'm sure he'd rather be tortured by senior brother Jianghu than lose his life. His plan of deliberately mystifying has failed in the end. The group of Holy Land disciples whispered among themselves again. All of them felt Duan Lingtian would definitely go back on his word after Jianghu agreed to his life and death duel. Duan Lingtian, I've already agreed to it. Don't tell me you don't dare to accept it now? Or perhaps, you're willing to be bashed by me instead of heading to the Hall of Life and Death to sign a life and death contract and carry out a battle of life and death? Jianghu had also noticed the surprised expression on Duan Lingtian's face. At once, a mocking smile appeared on his face. His words were filled with disdain. At this moment, Jianghu recalled his hesitation from before and felt a sense of exhilaration. At the same time, he was glad that he had agreed to it. Otherwise, he would be the one who would be embarrassed instead of Duan Lingtian. Lead the way. In the face of the group of Holy Land disciples' disdain and Jianghu's mockery, Duan Lingtian's expression regained its calmness. He merely uttered 2 words in response to Jianghu's words. Lead the way. The 2 words that came out of Duan Lingtian's mouth caused the entire place to fall silent again. The group of Holy Land disciples stared at Duan Lingtian in shock. They did not expect Duan Lingtian would still dare to continue at this moment. Was he not afraid of going overboard? Jianghu was stunned as well. He did not expect Duan Lingtian would still dare to be so domineering even after he had agreed to it. For a moment, his resolute heart was shaken again, and his expression changed again. What's wrong? You don't dare to do it anymore? Didn't you agree so readily just now? Duan Lingtian mocked when he saw the change in Jianghu's expression. As soon as Duan Lingtian's words left his mouth, Jianghu's face turned pale. He gritted his teeth and shouted angrily, Duan Lingtian, I'd like to see if you're still going to be so mysterious when it's time to sign the death pact. As soon as he finished speaking without waiting for Duan Lingtian's reply, Jianghu's body moved and shot out like a bolt of lightning. His target was the central square. If you have the guts, follow me to the Palace of Death and sign the death pact to have a death duel with me. If you don't, I'll let you have a taste of a fate worse than death. Jianghu's voice resonated from afar as he shot out. His voice was so cold that it seemed to cause the air in the surroundings to turn colder. However, after a while Jianghu slowed down again. He would occasionally turn around to look at Duan Lingtian in disdain as though he wanted to see if Duan Lingtian dared to follow him to the Palace of Death. The Palace of Death was located in the central square of the Saint Island of Zoroastrianism. The Saint Island was the name of the main island of the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. In the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism, Saint Land disciples who had irreconcilable enmity with each other could meet at the Palace of Death and sign the death pact under the witness of the Palace of Death's elders. Moreover, they would fight to the death in the death arena of the Palace of Death. At this moment, Jianghu was preparing to lead the way to the Palace of Death in the central square of the Saint Island. Naturally, the prerequisite was that Duan Lingtian dared to follow him. Senior brother Jianghu has become smarter this time. He's not fooled by Duan Lingtian anymore. As the saying goes, a fall into the pit, a gain in your wit. If senior brother Jianghu still doesn't learn, he'd be a true disciple and a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse in vain. That's right. A true disciple who doesn't dare to have a death duel with an ordinary elite disciple. Wouldn't he be laughed at if news of this spread out? Most of the Saint Land disciples secretly gave Jianghu a thumbs up when they saw how domineering he was. At the same time, these Saint Land disciples shifted their attention to Duan Lingtian. A hint of mockery could be seen in their eyes. It was as though they wanted to see if Duan Lingtian still had the guts to follow Yang Chong to the Palace of Death in the central square of the Saint Island. Once they entered the Palace of Death and signed the death pact, they would not be able to return. Junior brother Lingtian, don't go. Senior brother Lingtian, don't go. Just as Duan Lingtian was about to follow Yang Chong, 2 voice transmissions entered his ears. The 2 voice transmissions came from 2 people. Duan Lingtian instantly noticed the 2 Saint Land disciples standing in different directions. They were the ones who had sent him voice transmissions to stop him from following Yang Chong to the Palace of Death in the central square of the Saint Island. One of them was none other than Sunda, who was robbed of his Primus house by Duan Lingtian in the 4 Symbols Sanctum's first Mind's Punishment Zone. Similar to Duan Lingtian, Sunda was also from the Black Turtle Sanctum, one of the 4 Symbols Sanctums. Sunda was able to leave the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine in advance to come to the Saint Land and become a Saint Land disciple because he had successfully comprehended the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier. The reason he was able to successfully comprehend the Black Turtle's Barrier was due to the pressure Duanling Tian had given him that day. It was precisely because of this that he had always been grateful to Duanling Tian. For this reason, when he saw Duanling Tian was about to jump into the fire pit, he quickly sent a voice transmission to stop Duanling Tian. Junior brother Ling Tian, where there's life, there's hope. As long as you're still alive, you'll be able to take revenge one day. There's no need for you to follow Yang Chong to the Palace of Death just because of a moment of anger. If you really go to the Palace of Death and sign the Death Pact, it'll be too late even if you want to go back on your word. Sunda advised earnestly. The meaning of Sunda's words was simple. As long as he was alive, he would have a chance to take revenge. It was not worth it to die now. Thank you for your concern, senior brother Sunda. I know what I'm doing. After Duanling Tian gave Sunda a reassuring look, he shifted his gaze to the other person who had sent him a voice transmission. He had only seen the other person who had sent him a voice transmission once. For this reason he was very surprised when he saw the other person. This person was none other than the Saint Land disciple he had met 10 days ago. At that time he had just left the Saint Land's new disciple registration office. He did not know where the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples were staying, so he had stopped the other party to ask for directions. Apart from that, he had no other interactions with the other party. He did not expect the other party would send him a voice transmission at this moment. Senior brother, why are you calling me senior brother now? Duanling Tian asked with a wry smile on his face through voice transmission. He remembered when he had asked for directions that day, he had addressed the other party as senior brother, and the other party had politely addressed him as junior brother. Senior brother Ling Tian, Guanxiu didn't know your identity that day, so I've neglected you. Please forgive me. The Saint Land disciple who had reminded Duanling Tian was none other than Guanxiu, who had given directions to Duanling Tian 10 days ago. When he heard Duanling Tian's voice transmission, he immediately replied in a slightly fearful manner. Duanling Tian's strength was far greater than his. Chapter 1992. Duanling Tian could not help but smile wryly when he heard Guanxiu's words. However, he did not continue to argue with Guanxiu on this topic since he knew this was a world where the strong were respected. Guanxiu had addressed him as senior brother from the bottom of his heart. If he continued to address Guanxiu as senior brother, it would put a lot of pressure on Guanxiu. Senior brother Ling Tian, although you're strong, I'm afraid you're not as strong as a true disciple. All of them are at the Saint Celestial stage or above. This is especially true for senior brother Yangwen. He has already broken through to the first form of the Saint Celestial stage a few years ago. Guanxiu reminded him through voice transmission with a solemn expression on his face. Duanling Tian felt warmth in his heart when he heard Guanxiu's kindness. After all, he had only met Guanxiu once. It was rare for Guanxiu to be so kind to him. Don't worry. Duanling Tian replied to Guanxiu through voice transmission and gave him a reassuring look. Then, under Guanxiu and Sunda's helpless gazes, he flew up and caught up with the true disciple Yang Wen, who had already flown a distance away. Huh. Yang Wen's expression turned solemn when he saw Duanling Tian dared to follow him. He actually dares to follow him? It seems like he won't give up before he signs the Death Pact. He's really going all out. However, even if he's not as strong as senior brother Yang Wen, he'll still be able to pressure senior brother Yang Wen. That's right. Look at the grave expression on senior brother Yang Wen's face. As the Saint Land disciples shifted their gazes to Yang Wen, the grave expression on his face finally disappeared. He looked at Duanling Tian with disdain and said disdainfully, Duanling Dun, I'd like to see if you'll still be so unyielding when we enter the Palace of Death and sign the Death Pact. I hope you'll sign the Death Pact obediently at that time. Otherwise, I'll pull out your fingernails one by one and make you suffer a fate worse than death. When Yang Wen reached the end of his sentence, his tone became colder and colder as though it came from an ice cave. Although it was not targeted at the group of Saint Land disciples, it still made them shudder. Pull out my fingernails one by one? Hearing Yang Wen's harsh words, Duanling Tian's eyes flashed with killing intent. However, his expression was frighteningly calm. I'd like to see how long you can keep up this pretense. Yang Wen was infuriated when he saw Duanling Tian's expression remained unchanged after hearing his harsh words. He snorted coldly before he suddenly sped up and made his way to the square at the center of the Saint Island. Duanling Tian followed at a leisurely pace. From the beginning to the end, he had no intention of running away. Behind them, Sunda, Guanxiu, and the group of disciples who were watching the show also followed. When the group arrived in the air above the central square of the Holy Island, the majestic flow of people alarmed the group of Holy Land's disciples in the central square. What's going on? Why are there so many people here? The person in the lead seems to be Senior Brother Yangwen. It's indeed Senior Brother Yangwen. The group of people behind him seems to be brought by Senior Brother Yangwen. Senior Brother Yangwen's expression seems a little off. What's going on? In the saint land of Zoroastrianism, there were only 170 over true disciples. For this reason, many Saint Land disciples quickly recognized Yangwen, the true disciple. Although Yangwen's strength could only be considered as the weakest among the group of true disciples, there were still many true disciples. However, there were only so many successor disciples, so it was still very easy to recognize them. Senior Brother Yangwen. Is he going to the Palace of Death? Heavens! What's going on? Which true disciple is Senior Brother Yangwen going to have a death duel with? When the thousands of Saint Land disciples in the central square saw Yangwen taking the lead and heading towards the Palace of Death, it caused a commotion in the central square. When Yangwen's figure landed outside the Palace of Death, the thousands of Saint Land disciples in the central square learned about what had happened from the group of Saint Land disciples behind Yangwen. Senior Brother Yangwen is actually the son of the Northern Plethora sect's fifth elder? That young man behind Senior Brother Yangwen is Duan Lingtian, who's famous in Zoroastrianism recently? A 9-clawed dragon warrior? A genius martial cultivator who has mastered 4 high-grade divine abilities? Duan Lingtian is the one who issued a death duel with Senior Brother Yangwen today? When the matter was revealed, the group of Saint Land disciples in the central square burst into an uproar again. An ordinary elite disciple issuing a death duel with a true disciple. In the history of Zoroastrianism, such a ridiculous matter had never happened before. After all, a true disciple represented the strength of a saint celestial. It was not something an ordinary elite disciple could compare to. For a time, many Saint Land disciples felt the same way as the Saint Land disciples who had just arrived. They felt Duan Lingtian was deliberately mystifying and trying to scare Yangwen. I'm guessing Duan Lingtian will definitely not dare to sign the death duel after entering the Palace of Death. This Duan Lingtian is not simple. He's been playing mind games. I'm guessing he'll only refuse to sign the death duel after Senior Brother Yangwen signs his name on the death duel and imprints his fingerprint. Based on the current situation, he'll most likely do that. Once Senior Brother Yangwen hesitates and refuses to sign the death duel, he'll win this mind game. Naturally, Duan Lingtian heard the discussion among the Saint Land disciples. Mind games? Perhaps. Duan Lingtian was not the only one who heard the Saint Land disciples' discussion. Even Yangwen had heard it as well. Yangwen hesitated for a moment. Up until now, it seemed like he was not mentally prepared for the death duel. Even when he brought Duan Lingtian here, he only wanted to scare Duan Lingtian. After all, he was only 90% confident he could kill Duan Lingtian. The reason he was not 100% confident was because up until now, he still did not dare to be 100% sure if Duan Lingtian was really strong or if he was just bluffing when he suggested a death duel. The reason for this was because of the death of his younger brother, Jianghu. He was well aware of how Jianghu had died. It was Jianghu who first challenged Duan Lingtian to a death duel. During the death duel, Jianghu was killed by Duan Lingtian. Due to this reason, he was traumatized. Although he was 100% certain Duan Lingtian was not a match for him in the depths of his heart, he did not dare to make up his mind to fight Duan Lingtian to the death due to the shadow in his heart. As an older brother, he did not want to follow in his younger brother's footsteps. Don't tell me this Duan Lingtian is only going to go back on his word after I sign the death duel and put my handprint on the death duel? Yangwen's heart sank when he thought of this. However, faced with the thousands of Saint Land's disciples behind him, he knew this matter was no longer going to end peacefully. As the saying went, there was no turning back once the bow was drawn. Palace of Death? At the same time, Duan Lingtian, who was following closely behind Yangwen, shifted his gaze to the majestic and gigantic palace in front of him. He saw a plaque hanging on the palace's main entrance with the words Palace of Death, written in flamboyant calligraphy. Why did Senior Brother Yangwen stop? Go in. He's already at the entrance, why did he stop? Senior Brother Yangwen is afraid, right? He's a true disciple. Why is he afraid of an ordinary elite disciple who's deliberately mystifying himself? Since Yangwen, who had taken the lead, was standing outside the Hall of Life and Death without making a move for a long time, The group of Holy Land's disciples who had followed behind him to watch the show became impatient and began to complain. True disciple? If you don't dare to do it, leave now. Don't embarrass yourself here. He's a disgrace to all true disciples today. No matter when or where, there was no lack of people who wanted to stir up trouble. Many Saint Lan's disciples were hiding in the dark. They were afraid Yang Wen would drag them out, but they could not help but mock Yang Wen. Shut up. Along with a loud shout, Yang Wen's face darkened as he spoke in anger. His voice was so loud that it drowned out the noise at the entrance of the Hall of Life and Death, causing a group of Holy Land disciples to shut their mouths. Under the watchful eyes of the others, Yang Wen turned around and looked at Duanling Tian coldly before he said in a deep voice, Duanling Dun, I hope you'll have the guts to sign your name and put your handprint on the death duel after I sign the death duel. If you go back on your words at that time, not only will I pull out your fingernails one by one, but I'll also tear the skin off your face and destroy your face. As soon as Yang Wen finished speaking, he turned around and walked into the Palace of Death without waiting for Duanling Tian's reply. The moment Yang Wen's words left his mouth, Duanling Tian's expression changed immediately. He was no longer as calm as he was before. Tear the skin off his face piece by piece? Yang Wen's ruthlessness enraged Duanling Tian. He could no longer maintain his composure. When Duanling Tian saw Yang Wen walking into the Palace of Death, he followed suit. He's going in. Let's go. Let's go in and watch the show. The Palace of Death's death duel hasn't been opened for a long time. This time, I must bet all the contribution points in my crystal card. Even if the payout for senior brother Yang Wen's victory isn't high. Don't you think it's too early to say all these? We don't even know if Duanling Tian dares to sign the death duel yet. The group of Saint Lan's disciples at the back made a fuss as they followed suit. However, they stopped at the entrance of the Palace of Death. Chapter 1993. Yang Wen, who took the lead, and Duanling Tian, who followed closely behind, entered the Palace of Death one after another. After entering the Palace of Death, the first thing that entered Duanling Tian's eyes was a battle arena in the distance. The battle arena was huge. Apart from the area where Duanling Tian was standing, the other three sides of the battle arena were seats for spectators. However, at this moment the seats were empty. One could vaguely see many dried bloodstains on the battle arena. It was obvious the bloodstains were left behind in the past. So this is the death arena? Duanling Tian narrowed his eyes at this moment. The death arena was a venue provided by the Palace of Death for two Zoroastrianism's Saint Lan disciples who had signed a death pact to fight to the death. One of them was destined to die in the death arena. Both of you are going to sign a death pact? When Duanling Tian and Yang Wen's eyes landed on the death arena in the distance, a hoarse voice resonated in their ears. At first, the hoarse voice sounded from afar. However, in just a blink of an eye, it seemed to be right next to them. When Duanling Tian and Yang Wen regained their senses, they instantly noticed that an old man had appeared next to them without them noticing. The old man was skinny and had an ordinary appearance. He was dressed in the uniform of a Silver Flame Elder. It was obvious he was a Silver Flame Elder. The custodian of the Palace of Death? Along the way, Duanling Tian had learned about the Palace of Death from many Saint Lan disciples. He knew there was a Silver Flame Elder and 3 Bronze Flame Elders in the Palace of Death. The only Silver Flame Elder was the manager of the Palace of Life and Death. The custodian of the Palace of Death was called Niezue. He was widely acknowledged as the strongest Silver Flame Elder in the Zoroastrianism. If Lian was the first Silver Flame Elder in the Black Turtle Sanctum of the 4 Symbols Sanctums, then Niezue would be the first Silver Flame Elder in the Zoroastrianism. This is the custodian of the Palace of Death? An expert in the top 100 of the Supreme Saint ranking? Looking at this inconspicuous old man, Duanling Tian secretly gasped. When the group of Saint Lan disciples mentioned the Palace of Death earlier, they naturally mentioned the Palace of Death's custodian, Niezue. Therefore, Duanling Tian knew that Niezue was not only the steward of the Palace of Life and Death, but he was also ranked 78th on the Supreme Saint ranking. It was said that among the Silver Flame Elders of Zoroastrianism, only 2 of them were ranked in the top 100 of the Supreme Saint ranking. Niezue was ranked 78th on the Supreme Saint ranking, while the Silver Flame Elder who was ranked in the top 100 of the Supreme Saint ranking was ranked 99th on the Supreme Saint ranking. He was far behind Niezue. True disciple Yang Wen greets Elder Niezue. While Duanling Tian was guessing that the person before him was Niezue, Yang Wen had already bowed respectfully to the old man. Even someone as arrogant as Yang Wen lowered his head before Elder Niezue. Duan Lingtian greets Elder Niezue. Yang Wen's voice jolted Duan Lingtian back to his senses. Duan Lingtian immediately nodded his head and greeted the old man. At the same time, Duan Lingtian noticed the old man's calm gaze swept past him and Yang Wen. Although his gaze was calm, it gave Duan Lingtian a sense of pressure. Did both of you come to the Palace of Death to sign a death pact and have a death duel? The old man finally asked. As the steward of the Palace of Death, he naturally knew the Saint Lan disciples would not come to him unless they had a death duel. As soon as Niezue finished speaking, Yang Wen did not reply to the old man. Instead, he looked at Duan Lingtian to see how Duan Lingtian would respond. This was because if Duan Lingtian said yes and Duan Lingtian went back on his word, although the steward of the Palace of Death would not force him to sign the death pact, he would definitely teach him a lesson. This was because he was already making fun of the steward of the Palace of Death and insulting the dignity of the Palace of Death. It was understandable for the steward of the Palace of Death to teach him a lesson. As long as he was not killed or crippled, even the Saint Lan's Enforcement Hall would not care. Yes. When Duan Lingtian saw Yang Wen did not reply to Niezue and looked at him instead, he naturally knew what Yang Wen was thinking. However, he still responded without any hesitation. However, Yang Wen's expression changed slightly when he heard Duan Lingtian's response. However, Yang Wen's expression only changed for a moment before a gloating expression appeared on his face again. It was obvious he did not think Duan Lingtian would dare to sign the death pact. Follow me. After Niezue finished speaking, he walked to the side. Duan Lingtian and Yang Wen followed closely behind him. Soon after, under Niezue's instructions, one of the 3 bronze flame elders in the Palace of Death brought a piece of life and death contract, a brush that was dyed with ink and a plate of specially made ink. Who's going to go first? Niezue asked nonchalantly as he looked at Duan Lingtian and Yang Wen. Him. Duan Lingtian and Yang Wen looked at each other at the same time and said in unison. Humph. Niezue snorted when he saw Duan Lingtian and Yang Wen's refusal. He looked at Yang Wen and said nonchalantly, "You didn't reply when I asked if you're here to sign the death pact. Now you'll sign the death pact first." Yang Wen did not expect he would be placed in such a situation because he did not reply to Niezue earlier. Niezue actually asked him to sign the death pact first. He immediately thought of the death of his biological brother, Jianghu, and a hint of dread rose in his heart. He looked at Niezue and said, "Elder Niezue, can you let him sign the death pact first? If he dares to sign the death pact, I'll definitely sign it as well." Ah, Yang Wen, you're a true disciple after all. Don't tell me you're afraid of an ordinary elite disciple like me? The moment Yang Wen's words left his mouth, Niezue's expression turned grave immediately. Duan Lingtian, on the other hand, could not help but laugh out loud. At the same time, he did not forget to mock Yang Wen. Naturally, he would not sign the death pact first. What if Yang Wen went back on his word after he signed the death pact? After all, the reason he came here today was to kill Yang Wen. It was not only because Yang Wen wanted to kill him, but it was also because Yang Wen's father, Yang Chong, the 5th elder of the Northern Plethora sect, had threatened him earlier. Yang Chong actually wanted to kill his family. In Duan Lingtian's opinion, the moment Yang Chong threatened him with his family, he was already on the opposite side of Yang Chong. He would not rest until one of them was dead. Since Yang Chong wanted to kill his family, he would kill Yang Chong's son. Since he had already killed the younger one, he would kill the older one as well. Yang Chong, I really want to see what kind of expression you'll have when you find out I killed your eldest son as well. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Yang Wen's expression turned grave immediately. He immediately glared at Duan Lingtian. Yang Wen? You're the son of Yang Chong, the 5th elder of the Northern Plethora sect? Niezue asked indifferently as he looked at Yang Wen. Yes. Upon hearing Niezue's question, Yang Wen hurriedly withdrew his angry gaze from Duan Lingtian and replied respectfully. No matter what, your father is a powerhouse ranked at the 146th place on the Supreme Saint ranking. As his son and a true disciple of the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism, don't tell me you don't dare to sign the death pact even though you've come to my Palace of Death with someone else? If you don't dare to sign it, get lost now. A hint of anger could be seen on Niezue's face when he finished speaking. His tone was not friendly at all. At the same time, a terrifying aura emitted from Niezue's body and shrouded Yang Wen's body. It was so oppressive that Yang Wen's face turned pale. Duan Lingtian clicked his tongue and said, I wonder if Yang Chong, the 5th elder of the Northern Plethora sect, would be so angry that he would throw up 3 liters of blood when he finds out his eldest son missed the opportunity to avenge his youngest son? As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, Yang Wen's eyes widened immediately. Nie Zue also looked at Duan Lingtian with a hint of surprise in his eyes. You're Duan Lingtian? Although he was in the saint land of Zoroastrianism, he had heard about the death of Yang Wu, the youngest son of Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect. He knew Yang Wu was killed by a Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple called Duan Lingtian. Not only that, but he had also heard about Duan Lingtian. He also knew Duan Lingtian had come to the saint land of Zoroastrianism to become a saint land disciple because he had successfully comprehended the Black Turtle's barrier, the treasured divine ability of the Black Turtle Sanctum. Although he had heard about Duan Lingtian more than once, he had never seen Duan Lingtian before today. For this reason he did not recognize Duan Lingtian. Yes. When faced with Nie Zue, Duan Lingtian quickly put away his expression that seemed eager to see the world plunged into chaos and nodded respectfully. I'll sign it. While Nie Zue was looking at Duan Lingtian and was about to say something, Yang Wen suddenly shouted. Then Yang Wen stepped forward with bloodshot eyes and took the writing brush from the Palace of Death's bronze flame elder's hand. With a few swishing sounds he signed his name on the death contract. Smack. A soft sound resonated in the air. Yang Wen placed his right hand on the special ink pad and used his hand that was stained with the ink pad to leave his handprint on the death contract. After signing the death contract unilaterally, Yang Wen turned around and looked at Duan Lingtian. He sneered and said, Duan Lingtian, if you don't dare to sign this death contract, it means you're toying with Elder Nie Zue and blaspheming the Palace of Death. As soon as Yang Wen spoke, he had forced Duan Lingtian to the opposite side of the Palace of Death. When Yang Wen spoke, apart from Nie Zue who was the overseer of the Palace of Death, the other three bronze flame elders from the Palace of Death glared at Duan Lingtian with hostility. You don't have to worry about this. Chapter 1994. As soon as he finished speaking, Duan Lingtian signed his name and left his fingerprint on the death pact under Yang Wen's incredulous gaze. The death pact is formed. As soon as Duan Lingtian signed the death pact, the bronze flame elder from the Palace of Death who was holding the death pact said loudly, Yang Wen and Duan Lingtian will enter the death arena in a little while and have a death duel. A little while. Duan Lingtian was stunned. A puzzled expression appeared on his face. He did not know why they had to wait until a little while before the death duel. Was there a need to wait until so late? In the next hour, the Palace of Death will be the banker and launch a bet for the death duel between you and Yang Wen. If you're confident, you can bet all your contribution points on yourself, and bet that you'll be able to survive until the end. Of course, if you die, even if you don't bet on yourself, your contribution points won't be of any use to you. As though he could see Duan Lingtian's confusion, Nie Zue, the custodian of the Palace of Death, explained nonchalantly, for this reason, those who enter the death arena will usually bet all their contribution points on themselves. Duan Lingtian finally understood. He did not expect the Palace of Death to have such a tradition even though it was a solemn place. The Palace of Death won't take any of the Saint Land's disciples' contribution points. We'll only act as the middleman and mix all of your contribution points together before calculating the odds based on your contribution points. Naturally, if the elders from the Palace of Death think highly of someone, they can place a bet as well, Nie Zue said. Duan Lingtian nodded. Elder Nie Zue, you mean the other Saint Land's disciples can place a bet as well? Duan Lingtian asked in surprise. Of course. Nie Zue replied. Otherwise, what do you think the spectator seats around the death arena are for? If you want to place a bet, you can look for the other two bronze flame elders in the Palace of Death. After you've placed your bet and entered the death arena, the other Saint Land's disciples will be able to enter the Palace of Death to place their bets and enter the spectator seats around the death arena. Before I give the order, even though the two of you are in the death arena, you are not allowed to make a move. Otherwise, the first to attack will be severely punished by the Hall of Life and Death. Speaking up to this point, Nie Zue's tone became more severe. The traditions of the Hall of Life and Death cannot be overturned by anyone. Duan Lingtian nodded. He then walked out and looked for the other two bronze flame elders to place their bets. What a pity. I only have 100 contribution points. When he placed his bet, Duan Lingtian could not help but sigh to himself. At the same time he muttered in his heart, I only hope that the others will place their bets on Yang Wen. That way I can still win quite a bit. Yang Wen, why aren't you going to bet? After Duan Lingtian placed his bet and stepped into the death arena, Nie Zue looked at Yang Wen who was still standing in place. His expression darkened as he shouted in a low voice. Yang Wen could not help but shudder immediately. When he regained his senses, he hastily placed his bet. After placing his bet, Yang Wen flew up to the death arena and stared at Duan Lingtian. His eyes were filled with hostility as he stared at Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, although I don't know where you got your courage from to sign the death arena contract for a death duel with me, Yang Wen, I still have to tell you that I'll definitely kill you today to avenge my brother. To avenge my father. Yang Wen's expression was gloomy as he enunciated each word clearly. Everyone knows how to boast. Whether you can kill me or not depends on whether you have the ability to do so. Unlike Yang Wen, Duan Lingtian's expression was calm. After hearing Yang Wen's harsh words, he took his time to reply. I'd like to see if your expression will still be as calm after an hour. Yang Wen sneered. Then you can wait patiently. Duan Lingtian said nonchalantly. At the same time he shifted his gaze to look outside the Death Palace. Almost as soon as Duan Lingtian shifted his gaze, the group of Saint Lan disciples outside the Death Palace seemed to have received some kind of order and immediately swarmed in. At once, the Death Palace seemed to have turned into a noisy marketplace. Duan Lingtian actually signed the Death Arena contract? Many Saint Lan disciples had an expression of shock and disbelief on their faces. Until now, they still had not recovered from the shock of Duan Lingtian signing the Death Arena contract. I really don't know where he gets his courage from. To think he actually signed the Death Arena contract. He's seeking death. Some Saint Lan disciples immediately said disdainfully. They felt Duan Lingtian had overestimated himself by signing the Death Arena contract. I think this Duan Lingtian is a little strange. Ever since he came to Zoroastrianism, he has been fighting with the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder, Lian, since the beginning, but he didn't suffer any losses. Based on what he did after that, he doesn't seem like someone who would suffer losses. A Saint Lan disciple could not help but say when he recalled Duan Lingtian's experience after he came to Zoroastrianism. Many Saint Lan disciples began to laugh at this Saint Lan disciple's words. What? Don't tell me you think he's stronger than senior brother Yang Wen? Do you think he'll be able to kill senior brother Yang Wen in this death arena? Stop joking. The reason Duan Lingtian has not suffered any losses since he came to Zoroastrianism is because he's quite strong, and he hasn't encountered any tough opponents yet. As for Elder Lian, he didn't dare to make a move on him because of his status. Otherwise, do you think he'd be able to survive until now? That's right. If you think Duan Lingtian can survive today, you can bet on him. However, I'm afraid you'll lose everything. That's right. Since you're so confident in Duan Lingtian, you can bet on him. This way we'll be able to earn more contribution points. Perhaps, even this Saint Lan disciple did not know his words would cause so many Saint Lan disciples to laugh at him. He immediately shut his mouth. As for betting on Duan Lingtian, he was not stupid enough to bet on him. What he said just now was purely an irresponsible guess. It was not his real thoughts. In his opinion, Yang Wen had a higher chance of surviving today's death arena. After all, Yang Wen was a true disciple of the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. Moreover, he was a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse. As for Duan Lingtian, although he had mastered a few high-grade divine abilities and was quite strong, it would be difficult for him to catch up to Yang Wen since he only possessed a yellow innate spiritual root, let alone kill him. I'll bet 300 contribution points on senior brother Yang Wen. I'll bet 500 contribution points on senior brother Yang Wen. I'm going all out. I'll bet 3,300 contribution points on senior brother Yang Wen. As the group of Saint Lan disciples entered the death arena, the two Palace of Death Bronze Flame Elders who were in charge of collecting the bets became busy as well. 15 minutes had passed, but not a single Saint Lan disciple had bet on Duan Lingtian. Based on this, one could see how much they did not think Duan Lingtian would win. Nobody's betting on Duan Lingtian? This situation quickly attracted the attention of some Saint Lan disciples. If this continues, how are we going to earn any contribution points? That's right. The wager in the Palace of Life and Death is calculated based on the bets placed by both parties. If everyone placed their bets on senior brother Yang Wen, we would only be able to take back our own contribution points. We wouldn't be able to earn a single contribution point. Otherwise, who's going to bet on Duan Lingtian? If this continues, we won't be able to earn any contribution points at all. Do you think we're stupid? Betting on Duan Lingtian? Wouldn't that be equivalent to wasting our contribution points? The group of Saint Lan disciples fell into an uproar again. None of them thought Duan Lingtian would win. All of them felt Duan Lingtian would definitely die today. Although Duan Lingtian is quite strong, he only has a yellow innate spiritual root. Due to his innate talent, It's difficult for him to achieve anything great even if he has mastered a few high-grade divine abilities. That's right. Under such circumstances only a fool would bet on him. This can't go on. If we all bet on senior brother Yang, we won't be able to earn any contribution points at all. There's nothing we can do about that. Why don't you bet on Duanling Tian instead? I'm not a fool. Meanwhile, the group of Saint Lan disciples continued to discuss among themselves. Nobody was willing to bet on Duanling Tian after a long time. A voice suddenly sounded and attracted the attention of the group of Saint Lan disciples. I'll bet 100 contribution points on Duanling Tian. A Saint Lan disciple took the lead and placed his bet on Duanling Tian. Although it was only 100 contribution points, many Saint Lan disciples' eyes lit up immediately. They felt it was good that someone took the lead. There would definitely be many people who would follow suit. In that case, they would not have to worry about not earning enough contribution points. It did not matter if they did not earn much. It was fine as long as they earned some contribution points. As the saying went, a mosquito is still meat. Isn't he Sunda? Sunda? The Saint Lan disciple who successfully comprehended the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, before Duanling Tian and came to our Saint Land? That's him. I heard the reason he managed to comprehend the Black Turtle's Barrier was because Duanling Tian inadvertently helped him. No wonder he would bet on Duanling Tian. As it turns out, he wants to return the favor to Duanling Tian. He's smart to know that this is his last chance to return the favor to Duanling Tian. After today, even if he wants to return the favor to Duanling Tian, he won't be able to do so anymore. Many Saint Lan disciples recognized the Saint Lan disciple, Sunda, who had bet on Duanling Tian. Junior brother Ling Tian, I've just arrived at the Saint Land, and I only have so many contribution points. Sunda smiled wryly as he looked at Duanling Tian, who was in the death arena. Chapter 1995. It's alright. It's fine as long as I can earn something. As Duanling Tian replied to Sunda through voice transmission, he could tell Sunda did not think highly of him. He knew Sunda was only willing to bet on him because of other reasons. At the same time, Duanling Tian looked at Guan Xiu, the Saint Lan disciple who had given him directions 10 days ago and reminded him out of concern today. Just as he was about to remind Guan Xiu to bet on him through voice transmission, he realized Guan Xiu had already placed his bet. 3,500 contribution points on senior brother Duanling Tian. Without Duanling Tian's reminder, Guan Xiu placed 3,500 contribution points on Duanling Tian. Duanling Tian instantly felt a surge of warmth in his heart. At this moment, Guan Xiu gave him a feeling of being acknowledged. This feeling made him feel very comfortable. As Guan Xiu placed his bet, the originally noisy atmosphere in the Palace of Death suddenly fell silent. Each and every one of the Holy Ground's disciples looked at Guan Xiu in astonishment. 3,500 contribution points? All on Duanling Tian? Isn't he afraid of losing everything? I recognize him. His name is Guan Xiu, and he can be considered as a senior Saint Lan disciple in the Zoroastrianism Saint Land. However, 3,500 contribution points is most likely all he has. He's really bold. Isn't he afraid of losing everything? No matter what, he and Sunda have made a good start. Now, I'm not afraid of losing contribution points. That's true. Many Saint Lan disciples laughed. Guan Xiu, you're crazy. Some of the Saint Lan disciples who knew Guan Xiu stared at him with their mouths agape. They thought he was crazy. In their opinion, under such an obvious situation, only an idiot would bet on Duanling Tian. However, Guan Xiu ignored these people's doubts. Instead, he immediately looked at Duanling Tian and said through voice transmission, Senior brother Ling Tian, based on the current situation, I can't help you much. I'll place all the contribution points in my crystal card on you as a form of support. Good luck. Today I will definitely let you make a huge profit. Duanling Tian gave Guan Xiu a reassuring look before retracting his gaze. The group of Holy Land disciples had no choice but to admit that they had overestimated Sunda and Guan Xiu's leadership. After Guan Xiu had placed 3,500 contribution points on Duanling Tian, some people had also placed bets on Duanling Tian, but none of the bets added up to 3,000 contribution points. Aren't you betting too little on Duanling Tian? Quite a lot. It's better than nothing. The payout rate for the opening of the death arena today must be very exaggerated. I estimate that there are at least 800,000 contribution points betting on senior brother Yang, if not 1 million. I think so too. Although I bet 1,000 contribution points, even if senior brother Yang wins, I reckon I'll only earn a few contribution points. Forget it. Since it's a sure win, I'll just earn as many contribution points as I can. I bet 3,000 contribution points. However, the odds are too low. I estimate that I can only earn a dozen or so contribution points. As the group of Holy Land disciples discussed among themselves, they also flew into the spectator seats around the death arena. After they sat down, their eyes shifted to the two people standing in the death arena in unison as they waited for the death duel to begin. After about half an hour and a quarter of an hour, the people who were supposed to place their bets had already placed their bets. The death duel would officially begin after 15 minutes. Within this 15 minutes, other than the remaining 15 minutes where bets were still being accepted, the odds for the bets that the Palace of Life and Death had set up were also calculated and displayed before everyone's eyes. The total number of contribution points betting on Duan Ling Tian is only about 6,000 contribution points. However, the total number of contribution points betting on senior brother Yang Wen is at least a few 100,000 or even millions of contribution points betting on him. The odds must be very exaggerated. Indeed. I only hope it's within 200 to 1. Initially, I thought I could take this opportunity to make a fortune. I didn't expect almost everyone would bet on senior brother Yang Wen. It seems like nobody's stupid. The group of Saint Lan disciples in the spectator seats kept talking about the bet that Duan Ling Tian and Yang Wen would place on the death duel. All of them were looking forward to the final payout. Now, I can only hope that the few elders in the Palace of Death have also placed their bets on Duan Ling Tian. Otherwise, I can't even look at the payout rate. A Holy Land disciple suddenly remembered that the few elders in the Palace of Death could also place their bets. He could not help but say excitedly, "I don't think so. The elders in the Palace of Death are all shrewd people. It's impossible for them to think highly of Duan Ling Tian." However, as soon as another Holy Land disciple spoke, the enthusiasm of this Holy Land disciple seemed to have been extinguished by a pail of cold water. "I'll bet 100,000 contribution points on Duan Ling Tian." Without warning, a cold voice resonated from outside the Palace of Death. It shocked the group of people in the Palace of Death. Even the custodian of the Palace of Death, Nie Zue, could not help but narrow his eyes. Soon after, under the watchful eyes of the others, two figures appeared side by side in the Palace of Death. They were two young men. Moreover, the two young men's appearances were somewhat similar to each other. Senior brother Lu Mu? Duan Lingtian's eyes landed on the young man on the right. He was shocked. He did not expect to see him here. The Saint Land's assessment had yet to begin, right? Why would he appear in the Saint Land? Moreover, he was wearing the uniform of a Saint Land disciple. The person in front of Duan Ling Tian was none other than the White Tiger Sanctum's disciple, Lu Mu, whom he had met when he went to the White Tiger Sanctum to look for Zhu Luqi. At that time, Lu Mu's cultivation base was already at the Mastery Quintessential Saint stage. It would not be difficult for him to pass the Saint Land's assessment. Duan Ling Tian had thought about meeting Lu Mu again, but he thought it would only happen after the Saint Land's assessment. He did not expect to see Lu Mu before the Saint Land's assessment began. It's senior brother Lu Yun. It's really senior brother Lu Yun. Who's the Saint Land disciple standing next to him? Why does he look so similar to senior brother Lu Yun? I heard that senior brother Lu Yun has a cousin in the White Tiger Sanctum. Don't tell me he's senior brother Lu Yun's cousin? The Saint Land's assessment has yet to begin, right? Why would he be here? While Duan Ling Tian was shocked by Lu Mu's appearance, most of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples present on the scene were also shocked by the appearance of the young man next to Lu Mu. Even Yang Wen, who was confronting Duan Ling Tian, could not help but have a hint of dread in his eyes when he looked at the young man next to Lu Mu. Lu Yun was also a true disciple like him. However, compared to him, Lu Yun was much more famous. In the fire worship sect Saint Land, there was a ranking list for the true disciples. It was called the True Ranking. There were a total of 100 names on the ranking list. Only the strongest 100 among the 170 or so true disciples were qualified to be listed on the ranking list. Yang Wen was still not qualified to be listed on the true ranking. However, Lu Yun had long been ranked 27th on the true ranking. He was one of the strongest true disciples in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. Due to this reason, his appearance had caused quite a commotion. Why is senior brother Lu Yun here? Moreover, he actually wanted to bet 100,000 contribution points on Duan Ling Tian. Is he joking? Under the puzzled gazes of many Saint Land disciples, Lu Yun went to look for the Palace of Death's Bronze Flame Elder and took out his crystal card to bet 100,000 contribution points. From the beginning until the end, he did not even frown at all. Senior brother Lu Yun has so much confidence in Duan Lingtian? Oh my god. After senior brother Lu Yun's actions, I'm starting to regret betting all my contribution points on senior brother Yang Wen. Right now I even want to bet more on Duan Lingtian. It's not for any other reason but for senior brother Lu Yun to think highly of him and make him bet 100,000 contribution points on him. Just as the disciples of the Saint Land were about to make a move, they saw, whoosh. Duan Lingtian, who was originally standing in the death arena, suddenly soared into the air and charged toward the young man who came with Lu Yun. Senior brother Lu Mu, when did you come to the Saint Land? Moreover, how did you become a Saint Land disciple? Duan Lingtian asked in surprise as he looked at Lu Mu. Although he had only met Lu Mu once in the past because of their similar natures, it did not affect them from becoming friends. For this reason, he was surprised and delighted when he saw Lu Mu in the Palace of Death. Junior brother Lingtian, could it be that only you're allowed to comprehend the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability but I'm not allowed to comprehend the White Tiger Sanctum's most treasured divine ability? Lu Mu smiled. His words revealed the reason he came to the Saint Land and became a Saint Land disciple. As it turned out, Lu Mu was able to come to the Saint Land and become a Saint Land disciple because he had successfully comprehended the White Tiger Sanctum's most treasured divine ability. Of course not. I'm just a little surprised. Duan Lingtian smiled awkwardly. You're Duan Lingtian? At the same time, Lu Yun, who had finished placing his bet, returned to Lu Mu's side. He glanced at Duan Lingtian indifferently before he said in a cold and calm voice, My cousin asked me to place my bet on you. I hope you won't disappoint him in me. After that, Lu Yun did not wait for Duan Lingtian's reply before he flew toward the spectator's seat. The spectator's seat had a great view. It was already filled with people. However, when the group of Saint Land disciples sitting in the spectator's seat saw Lu Yun's arrival, they stood up and made way for him as though he was a plague. Junior brother Lingtian, my cousin has always been like this. Please don't blame him. Chapter 1996. It's all right. Duan Lingtian shook his head. He could tell Lu Yun did not have any ill intentions. 100,000 contribution points, however, when he recalled Lu Yun had bet 100,000 contribution points on him, he could not help but narrow his eyes. When he opened them again, a glint flashed in his eyes as though he had thought of something. Senior brother Lu Mu, please look for senior brother Lu Yun first. I have an urgent matter to discuss with Elder Nie Zue. Duan Lingtian hastily told Lu Mu and smiled apologetically. He did not wait for Lu Mu's reply and immediately flew out to meet Nie Zue, the custodian of the Palace of Death, who had just soared up to the sky and was preparing to host the death duel in the death arena. Is there anything? Nie Zue asked with a frown when he saw Duan Lingtian had appeared in front of him in just a blink of an eye and was blocking his path. At the same time, all the Saint Land disciples present on the scene, including Lu Mu, shifted their attention to Duan Lingtian. Why is Duan Lingtian looking for Elder Nie Zue at this time? The death duel was about to begin. At this moment, Duan Lingtian was not waiting in the death arena. Instead, he was looking for Elder Nie Zue. Everyone could not help but wonder what he was trying to do. Elder Nie Zue. Under the watchful eyes of the others, Duan Lingtian raised his hand and a dilapidated bow appeared in his hand. There were 10 holes on the bow, making it look even more dilapidated. The only thing worth mentioning was the bowstring of the bow was not simple. Naturally, Nie Zue was the only one whose eyes lit up slightly. He could tell the bowstring of the bow was not simple. As for the others, they did not notice the bowstring since they were too far away. When they saw the bow that Duan Lingtian took out, most of them had a look of disdain on their faces. Why is Duan Lingtian taking out this dilapidated bow at this time? I don't know. Perhaps he's trying to bribe Elder Nie Zue with this dilapidated bow so he can cancel the death duel. What a joke. Don't worry, Elder Nie Zue doesn't care about this crappy bow at all. Even if he did, it's impossible for Elder Nie Zue to cancel today's life and death duel. The life and death contract has already been signed. If Elder Nie Zue abuses his authority to cancel today's life and death duel, then his position as the manager of the Palace of Life and Death will come to an end. The group of Holy Land disciples discussed animatedly, and their tone was full of ridicule and disdain. At the same time, Duan Lingtian looked at Nie Zue and said, Elder Nie Zue, I would like to pawn this bow with you in exchange for some contribution points to bet on myself. In today's battle to the death, if I die, this bow will be yours. If I'm lucky enough to survive, I'll use twice the contribution points to redeem it. As Duan Lingtian spoke, he handed the bow in his hand to Nie Zue. The seemingly broken bow in Duan Lingtian's hand was none other than the sun-shooting bow. When the sun-shooting bow was at its peak, it was an extremely powerful celestial supreme treasure. However, when Duan Lingtian obtained it, not only was the bowstring missing, but the 10 most important heavenly jewels on the bow were also missing. Even so, the sun-shooting bow was still extremely powerful after the 5-clawed devil dragon's dragon tendon was used as the bowstring. However, since Duan Lingtian had obtained the legacy of the Sovereign Heart Sword, he had focused all his attention on the sword Dao. Due to this reason, the sun-shooting bow was gradually covered in dust. If it was not for the fact that Lu Yun had bet 100,000 contribution points on him, he would not have remembered the sun-shooting bow at all. Currently, he wanted to pawn the sun-shooting bow with Nie Zue, the custodian of the Palace of Death, in exchange for some contribution points. After the battle to the death, he would redeem the sun-shooting bow. He believed that with Nie Zue's strength and identity, he would be able to tell how extraordinary the sun-shooting bow was. It seems like you're very confident in yourself. Nie Zue looked deeply at Duan Lingtian before he reached out to take the sun-shooting bow from Duan Lingtian. When his gaze landed on the sun-shooting bow, his eyes gradually lit up. Although he could tell the bowstring was extraordinary, he did not pay attention to the bow itself. Now that he held the bow, he realized the most precious part of the bow was not the bowstring but the bow itself. It's not that I'm confident in myself. After all, if I die today, everything that belongs to me will no longer belong to me. I might as well pawn the most precious thing in my possession and take a gamble. When Duan Lingtian heard Nie Zue's words, he said calmly, "Pfft." At this moment, a scoff sounded in the air. It was Yang Wen who was standing in the death arena. He glanced at Duan Lingtian in disdain and said with contempt, "Duan Lingyan, from what you said, this lousy bow is the most precious thing in your possession? How pathetic. Do you think Elder Nie Zue would be interested in your lousy bow? What a joke." Most of the other Saint Lan disciples were also looking at Duan Lingtian mockingly. Has this Duan Lingtian gone crazy from thinking about contribution points? He actually wants to pawn such a lousy bow in Elder Nie Zue's hands in exchange for contribution points. Is there something wrong with his head? Such a lousy bow is obviously from a street stall. Even if he sells it to me at a price of 1 contribution point, I'll still have to consider buying it. He's really bold to actually use such a lousy bow to try and take advantage of Elder Nie Zue. The group of Saint Lan disciples' words were filled with disdain. All of them felt Duan Lingtian was being too naive. He actually wanted to use a lousy bow to gain something without risking anything. Moreover, of all people, he actually dared to look for Elder Nie Zue. Did he really think Elder Nie Zue was blind? At this moment, even Lu Yun, Lu Mu, Sunda, and Guan Xiu could not help but frown. They could not tell what was so special about the bow. However, in the next moment, the Palace of Death's custodian, Nie Zue's reaction stunned all of the Saint Lan disciples present on the scene, including the 4 of them. Why, you're really going to pawn this bow with me? Not only was Nie Zue not enraged when he held the lousy bow in the eyes of the Saint Lan disciples, but he even looked at Duan Lingtian excitedly. In the eyes of the others, it was obvious that he had lost his composure. The reason Nie Zue was so excited was none other than the fact that he discovered the bow in his hand was not ordinary. He had only weighed the bow a few times before he discovered that although its strength was not as strong as 100 inscription saint weapon, it was not too far off. Naturally, Nie Zue would not care if it was a saint weapon that was not as strong as 100 inscription saint weapon. After all, even 100 inscription saint weapon was nothing to him. The reason he valued this bow was because he discovered there were only a few low-grade saint inscriptions inscribed on the bowstring. It could not even be considered a 10 inscription saint weapon. With the strength of this bow, it's not difficult for it to withstand a bowstring inscribed with a few hundred saint inscriptions. Nie Zue had already tested it earlier. Even when he circulated the powerful saint origin in his body, he could not bend the body of the bow in his hand at all. Based on this, one could see how rare and precious the material used to forge this bow was. Even if it's just a bowstring inscribed with a few hundred saint inscriptions, its strength is still stronger than most 1,000 inscription saint weapons. Nie Zue was 100% sure of this. Just now, when he was testing the bow in his hand, he also discovered that the bow contained a mysterious power. Although the bowstring of this bow was made from the tendons of a 5-clawed divine dragon, it was only inscribed with a few low-grade saint inscriptions. Regardless of the body of the bow, its strength was only slightly stronger than an ordinary 10 inscription saint weapon. The reason the strength of this bow was comparable to 100 inscription saint weapon was due to the mysterious energy in it. Elder Nie Zue, this bow is not bad, right? I obtained this when I obtained the legacy left behind by the nine-clawed divine dragon. If it weren't for the fact that I'm on the brink of death today, I wouldn't have taken it out so easily. Duan Lingtian said. It's not just not bad. When Ye Zue heard Duan Lingtian's bow was left behind by the nine-clawed divine dragon, his eyes lit up even more. At the same time he said readily, all right. How many contribution points do you want? 200,000 contribution points is enough. Duan Lingtian said. At the same time he took out his crystal card and passed it to Nie Zue. Nie Zue took Duan Lingtian's crystal card and transferred 200,000 contribution points to Duan Lingtian without hesitation. At the same time he could not help but exclaim, now I really hope you'll be killed by Yang Wen. If that's the case your bow will be mine. In Nie Zue's opinion, it was worth it to exchange 200,000 contribution points for a saint weapon that was even more powerful than 1,000 inscription saint weapon. In Zoroastrianism, an ordinary 1,000 inscription saint weapon would cost 1 million contribution points to exchange for. Moreover, it was usually priceless. Even for the most outstanding saint inscription master in the upper province of the Dao martial saint land, inscribing 1,000 inscription saint weapon was a skill that required a lot of effort. The deal between Duan Lingtian and Ye Zue was completed in just a blink of an eye. It was only when Duan Lingtian took the 200,000 contribution points Nye Zue transferred to him and went to the Palace of Death's Bronze Flame Elder to bet on himself that the group of Saint Lan disciples around the Death Arena finally regained their senses. As soon as they regained their senses, an uproar broke out. T200,000 contribution points. Are you kidding me? That lousy bow is worth 200,000 contribution points? Lousy bow? You actually think the bow left behind by the nine-clawed divine dragon is a lousy bow? What a joke. No wonder Elder Nye Zue was so agitated earlier. As it turns out, he could see how extraordinary the bow is. It seems like this bow was indeed left behind by the nine-clawed divine dragon. This Duan Lingtian is crazy. He actually didn't use the weapon left behind by the nine-clawed divine dragon in the death arena. Instead, he used it to exchange for contribution points. What a gambler. The Saint Lan disciples present on the scene did not believe Duan Lingtian's words. However, they still believed in Nye Zue's judgment. From now on, stop placing bets. At the same time, after Duan Lingtian bet 200,000 contribution points on himself, the Palace of Death's Bronze Flame Elder's voice resonated in the air. Everyone present on the scene was shocked. Chapter 1997. Soon after, the Palace of Death's Bronze Flame Elder calculated the odds for today's death duel in the Palace of Death. 7. 1 on Yang Wen winning. 1. 7 on Duan Lingtian winning. Soon after, one of the Palace of Death's Bronze Flame Elder announced loudly. His voice resonated in the Palace of Death's ears. In other words, if Yang Wen was the one who survived today, they would receive 1 contribution point for every 7 contribution points they bet on Yang Wen. On the other hand, if Duan Lingtian was the one who survived, they would receive 7 contribution points for every 1 contribution point they bet on Duan Lingtian. More than 300,000 contribution points have already been bet on Duan Lingtian, and the odds are still so exaggerated? Doesn't this mean more than 1 million contribution points have been bet on senior brother Yang Wen? Many Saint Lan disciples were stunned when they learned about the odds from the Palace of Death's Bronze Flame Elder. Isn't this too much? It seems like everyone thinks highly of senior brother Yang Wen. I'm starting to regret betting 2,000 contribution points on senior brother Yang Wen. Most of the elders in the Palace of Death have also bet a lot of contribution points on senior brother Yang Wen. That's for sure. Otherwise, we wouldn't have bet more than 2,100,000 contribution points on senior martial brother Yang Wen. No matter what, most of the Saint Lan's disciples who placed their bets on Yang Wen were satisfied with the current odds. Duan Lingtian, do you need this bow in your death duel with Yang Wen? If you do, I can lend you this bow temporarily. After all, I'll have to return this bow to you if you survive. If you don't survive, it won't be too late for me to take this bow back from you. When Duan Lingtian returned to the death arena to confront Yang Wen, Nye Zue, the custodian of the Palace of Death, who had already arrived in the air above the death arena, asked as he looked at Duan Lingtian. Upon hearing this, most of the Holy Land disciples turned to look at Duan Lingtian. As expected of the number 1 Silver Flame Elder of Zoroastrianism, Elder Nye Zue's courage is truly admirable. That's right. Now that Duan Lingtian's bow was in Elder Duan Lingtian's hands as collateral, it was considered Elder Nye Zue's personal property for the time being. Even if Duan Lingtian wanted to borrow it, he could refuse. Who would have thought that at this critical moment, before Duan Lingtian could speak, he would take the initiative to lend the bow to Duan Lingtian. That bow is a saint weapon left behind by a 9-clawed divine dragon. If Duan Lingtian uses it to fight senior brother Yang Wen in a death duel, perhaps he'll be able to last for a long time before being killed by senior brother Yang Wen. Most of the Saint Lan disciples whispered among themselves. They felt that even if Duan Lingtian used the sun-shooting bow, he would not be a match for Yang Wen. Naturally, some of the Saint Lan disciples were worried as well. All of them were worried. If Duan Lingtian used the bow left behind by the 9-clawed divine dragon, wouldn't his strength rise to another level? At that time, wouldn't senior brother Yang Wen be in danger? The moment they thought of this, they began to cause a commotion again. Since you have the guts to pawn the bow left behind by the 9-clawed divine dragon, you should have the guts not to use it. Don't forget that you've already pawned it. If you're a man, don't use that bow. Duan Lingtian, don't make us look down on you. For the sake of their contribution points, these Saint Lan disciples threw caution to the wind and said whatever they could think of. However, they soon realized, they wasted quite a bit of their saliva, but Duan Lingtian, on the other hand, did not listen to them at all. Immediately they were so angry that they wanted to vomit blood. Regardless of the commotion caused by the Holy Land's disciples who had bet on Yang Wen maintained a calm expression on his face. He was not affected by Nie Zue's offer to lend the bow to Duan Lingtian. Other than Duan Lingtian himself, he knew Duan Lingtian better than anyone else present. Because of this, he knew that Duan Lingtian was an expert in the sword and not the bow. Perhaps Duan Lingtian's bow was not bad. However, if he was stronger when it came to using a bow, why did he not use a bow when he fought with Hong Su, the great senior brother of the Black Turtle Sanctum, in the Four Symbol Sanctum's first mine? In addition, Duan Lingtian's advanced defensive god art was a sword-type god art. This he also knew. For this reason, Yang Wen was almost certain. Even if Duan Lingtian's bow was left behind by the 9-clawed divine dragon, it would not be of much help to Duan Lingtian since Duan Lingtian was not an expert in using a bow. As it turned out, Yang Wen was right. Thank you for your kindness, Elder Nie Zue. However, I'm not an expert in using a bow. Duan Lingtian politely declined Nie Zue's kindness. At the same time, he realized Nie Zue, who was also not an expert in using a bow, would not covet the sun-shooting bow. Even if Nie Zue was tempted by the sun-shooting bow after discovering how extraordinary it was, Nie Zue was not an expert in using a bow. However, since Nie Zue was not skilled in using a bow, and he was the first Silver Flame Elder of the Fire Worship sect who valued his reputation, it was impossible for him to covet a bow that he might not even need in front of so many people. For this reason, Duan Lingtian was willing to take out the sun-shooting bow and pawn it in Nie Zue's hands. If it was someone else, he might not have dared to do this. No wonder Duan Lingtian would pawn the treasured bow left behind by the 9-clawed divine dragon. As it turns out, he's not an expert in using a bow. At the same time, the group of Saint Lan disciples finally understood. Many Saint Lan disciples who had placed heavy bets on Yang Wen could not help but heave a sigh of relief. However, the sun-shooting bow that the group of Saint Lan disciples called a broken bow had now become a treasured bow. The change in their attitude toward the sun-shooting bow was not small at all. All of this was naturally due to Nie Zue, the custodian of the Palace of Death, acknowledging the sun-shooting bow. Naturally, apart from Duan Lingtian, everyone present on the scene, including Nie Zue, did not know that the seemingly broken bow in Nie Zue's hands was the sun-shooting bow. From the beginning until the end, Duan Lingtian did not introduce it at all. The reason he did not introduce it was because Duan Lingtian did not think it was necessary. In his opinion, the sun-shooting bow would not stay in Nie Zue's hands for long. It would return to him very soon. In the death arena, Duan Lingtian and Yang Wen stood facing each other as they prepared to make their move. Duan Lingtian was an ordinary elite disciple in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. He had just joined the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism not long ago and could be considered as a new disciple. Yang Wen was a true disciple in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. He had been in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism for many years and was considered a senior disciple. These two people were going to sign a death pact in the Palace of Death in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. Let's begin. As Nie Zue, the custodian of the Palace of Death, spoke, the atmosphere in the entire place was instantly ignited. All of the Saint Lan disciples' attention was focused on the death arena as they stared at the two people standing on it. It's finally going to begin. Most of the Saint Lan disciples' hearts skipped a beat as an expression of anticipation appeared on their faces. Senior brother Yang Wen, you can do it. Kill Duan Lingtian. Senior brother Yangwen, I've bet 5,000 contribution points on you. Don't disappoint me. Senior brother Yangwen, kill him. Kill him. Many of the Saint Lan disciples stood up. Their eyes were bloodshot as they continued to shout. It was as though Duan Lingtian was the murderer of their fathers. These Saint Lan disciples were the ones who had bet heavily on Yangwen. If Yangwen killed Duan Lingtian, it would mean that they would be able to reap a lot of contribution points today. For this reason, they were more concerned about the outcome of this battle than anyone else. Junior brother Lingtian, Sunda, who was sitting in the corner of the spectator seat, sighed as he retracted his gaze. He could not bear to watch the next scene. In his opinion, it was impossible for Duan Lingtian to be a match for Yangwen. Senior brother Lingtian, you can do it. Guanxiu stared at Duan Lingtian as he waved his fist and cheered for Duan Lingtian. Unfortunately, even though his voice wasn't there, it was completely drowned out by the endless voices cheering for Yangwen. He seemed to be isolated and helpless. Brother Mu, apart from himself, nobody thinks highly of him. Why do you think so highly of him? You even asked me to bet my contribution points on him? There were only 2 people sitting in the spectator seats with an excellent view. One of them asked the other. The person who asked the question was none other than the true disciple, Lu Yun. He was also ranked 27th on the true ranking of Zoroastrianism. The person he asked was Lu Mu, who had just arrived at the Saint Land from the White Tiger Sanctum. I believe in him. Lu Mu's answer was simple and straightforward when faced with Lu Yun's question. Lu Yun was rendered speechless for a moment. He felt Lu Mu was a little too blind. At this moment, Lu Yun even regretted listening to Lu Mu and betting all his 100,000 contribution points on Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, I didn't expect you to sign a death duel pact with me. I really admire your courage. I really have to thank you for giving me a chance to avenge my brother. Yangwen said as he looked at Duan Lingtian coldly when Ye Zue, the custodian of the Palace of Death, announced the start of the duel. As soon as he finished speaking, a powerful energy surged out of his body. Boom, boom, boom. The energy from Yangwen's body surged out, causing the surrounding space to ripple and set off a gust of wind. It was as though heaven and earth would change color. The energy that surged out of Yangwen's body was not the saint energy. It was the saint origin of a saint celestial stage powerhouse. The saint celestial stage was divided into 9 forms. The first form of the saint celestial stage was the saint origin form. When one's cultivation base had broken through to the first form of the saint celestial stage, it meant the saint energy in one's body had transformed into the more powerful saint origin. Compared to the saint energy. Chapter 1998. Devouring Tactic. Almost at the same time as the energy in Yangwen's body surged out, Duan Lingtian's Sun Saint energy that had been accumulating in his body also surged out. In just a blink of an eye, a whirlpool appeared with his body as the center. The speed of the whirlpool was getting faster and faster. A powerful suction force swept out from the whirlpool as a gigantic beast the size of a mountain opened its mouth and sucked in all the heaven and earth spirit energy in the surroundings. Boom, boom, boom. When Duan Lingtian used the devouring tactic, the heaven and earth spirit energy in the surroundings was being sucked in by him. The heaven and earth spirit energy in the surroundings surged rapidly, causing a series of muffled explosions to reverberate in the air. In terms of commotion, it was not inferior to the commotion caused by Yangwen's powerful saint origin surging out of his body. Assist-type divine ability? Yangwen, who was standing far away, watched as Duan Lingtian devoured all the heaven and earth spirit energy in the surroundings. He saw how Duan Lingtian's saint energy rose from the peak of the exemplary saint stage to the intermediate quintessential saint stage in such a short time. Yangwen's eyes widened in shock. Such a ridiculous boost had far surpassed the divine ability in the Azure Dragon Sanctum, one of the 4 symbols sanctums. Most importantly, he could still hear Duan Lingtian's words. Duan Lingtian's assist-type divine ability could last for a long time. It was much longer than an ordinary assist-type divine ability. However, saint energy that's only comparable to an intermediate quintessential saint stage powerhouse is nothing in front of me. It's not even worth mentioning. The moment Yangwen thought of this, his confidence soared. Naturally, Yangwen did not make the first move even though his confidence had soared. This was because he knew Duan Lingtian's strength was not as simple as an intermediate quintessential saint stage powerhouse. After all, Hong Su, whose strength was close to the saint celestial stage after consuming the forbidden pill, had died in Duan Lingtian's hands. Although Duan Lingtian's true strength was not at the saint celestial stage yet, he was only half a step away. If this was a normal spar, he would choose to make the first move when facing an opponent who was almost impossible to be his opponent. However, because this was a battle of life and death, even if he did not think that Duan Lingtian was no match for him, he still had to face it calmly. Because this was a matter of life and death, he had to be cautious. This is the Duan Lingtian's support type divine ability? At the same time, everyone, including the custodian of the Palace of Death, Nie Zue, and the other 3 bronze flame elders, shifted their attention to Duan Lingtian. They witnessed with their own eyes how the whirlpool that had merged with Duan Lingtian's body had absorbed all the heaven and earth spirit energy in the surroundings in just a short period of time. Not only that, but it had also raised Duan Lingtian's saint energy to the intermediate quintessential saint stage. What a terrifying boost. In just a blink of an eye, the aura of Duan Lingtian's saint energy has been raised from the peak of the exemplary saint stage to the intermediate quintessential saint stage. Although I've heard about the high-grade support-type divine ability Duan Lingtian mastered, it's still shocking to see it with my own eyes. That's right. Even the support-type divine ability from the Azure Dragon Sanctum, one of the 4 symbol sanctums of Zoroastrianism, wouldn't have such a ridiculous boost even if it was fully comprehended. This is a leap of 1 stage and it's a boost of 1 stage. Let's not talk about the support-type divine ability from the Azure Dragon Sanctum. Even the number 1 support-type divine ability in Zoroastrianism is only at this level if it's fully comprehended. If that's the case, doesn't this support-type divine ability that Duan Lingtian mastered is comparable to the number 1 support-type divine ability in Zoroastrianism? Theoretically, yes. The Saint Land disciples in the spectator seats around the death arena had a solemn expression on their faces. Based on their words, they had a high opinion of Duan Lingtian's support-type divine ability. If Duan Lingtian hasn't fully comprehended the support-type divine ability that he's currently using, doesn't that mean his support-type divine ability is more powerful than the number 1 support-type divine ability in Zoroastrianism? A Saint Land disciple in the spectator seats suddenly said. His words caused the expressions of the Saint Land disciples in the surroundings to turn solemn immediately. If there's still room for improvement in the support-type divine ability that he's using, it's indeed more powerful than the number 1 support-type divine ability in Zoroastrianism. That's right. The only way he can improve his support-type divine ability in Zoroastrianism is if he has fully comprehended the number 1 support-type divine ability in Zoroastrianism. If there's still room for improvement in his support-type divine ability, it's indeed more powerful than the number 1 support-type divine ability in Zoroastrianism. If there's still room for improvement in his support-type divine ability, then even if his support-type divine ability is not as good as Zhuangzi Buddhism's support-type divine ability, I'm afraid it's not too far off. As the group of Saint Land disciples discussed among themselves, they brought up one of Zhuangzi Buddhism's support-type divine abilities. In the upper province of the Tao martial Saint Land, the 3 great sects were 3 behemoths. They were great evils that stood above all the other forces. Each of the 3 great sects had many high-grade divine abilities, but each of them had their own strengths. For example, the most powerful divine ability in the Zoroastrianism was an offensive divine ability. That offensive divine ability was also known as the number 1 divine ability in Zoroastrianism. It was also the most treasured divine ability in Zoroastrianism. Another example was Zhuangzi Buddhism. The most powerful divine ability was an assist-type divine ability. It was also the most treasured divine ability in Zhuangzi Buddhism. When that assist-type divine ability was fully comprehended, it could raise a person's cultivation base by a whole stage in a short time. What did it mean by a whole stage? In other words, if Duan Lingtian cast it, his son's saint energy that was equivalent to the saint energy at the peak of the exemplary saint stage would be raised to the saint energy at the peak of the quintessential saint stage in a short time. Due to this reason, the group of Saint Land disciples compared this assist-type divine ability in Zhuangzi Buddhism. As for the last sect, the Heaven Divination sect, their most powerful divine ability was a defensive divine ability. It was also the most treasured divine ability in the Heaven Divination sect. Compared to the treasured divine abilities in Zoroastrianism and Zhuangzi Buddhism, the treasured divine ability in the Heaven Divination sect was the most famous. This was because it was an ancient defensive divine ability that had been passed down since ancient times. It had already existed before the 3 great sects appeared in the Tao martial Saint Land. That divine ability was also widely acknowledged as the number 1 defensive divine ability in the Tao martial Saint Land. Whoosh! As a soft sound resonated in the air, under the watchful eyes of the others, the air within a 100-meter radius around Jianghu began to ripple. In the end, it formed a territory that was filled with murderous aura. One could vaguely see blood-red energy lingering in the air. Whoosh, whoosh. Not only that, but above Yang Wen's head, a vast amount of Saint Chi had also appeared out of nowhere and split into two. It transformed into a long spear and a gigantic ape. The long spear was more than 30 meters long while the gigantic ape stood in the air like a mountain. If it was outside, it would be able to blot out the sun. Saint Origin Consolidated Weapon? Saint Origin Consolidated Beast? Upon seeing this, Duan Lingtian could not help but be stunned. In his opinion, this was a very low-level technique. It was similar to the leveling up of the True Energy Consolidated Weapon and True Energy Consolidated Beast. Usually, the True Energy Consolidated Beast and True Energy Consolidated Territory were the three great techniques that a martial or Dao cultivator mastered in the early days. Among them, the True Energy Consolidated Territory was the only technique that could accompany them for a long time. Naturally, it was only the furthest they could go. This was because later on, as one's martial arts techniques improved further, as well as the appearance of various divine abilities, even the condensed domain of vital energy would gradually weaken. Combine. However, as soon as Yang Wen shouted, Duan Lingtian's eyes widened again. His expression turned solemn. The gigantic ape that was the size of a mountain that was formed by the Saint Origin Consolidated Beast above Yang Wen's head suddenly came to life. It extended its right arm and grabbed the long spear that was more than 30 meters long. After the long spear landed in its hand, the gigantic ape's sturdy body trembled. Then it extended its other hand and punched its chest. Dong, dong, dong. Ow. Without warning, the gigantic ape opened its mouth and roared. Its voice was like a clap of thunder as it tore through the air. Some of the Saint Lan disciples with low cultivation base could not help but frown. At the same time, under everyone's watchful eyes, with Yang Wen as the center, the territory that was filled with murderous aura within a 100-meter radius transformed into a blood-red torrent that surged toward the gigantic ape. It entered the gigantic ape's body through its bloody mouth. It looked as though the gigantic ape had swallowed Yang Wen's territory. After the domain was completely devoured by the giant ape, there were no substantial changes to the giant ape's body. However, around its body and around the spear in its hand, strands of blood-red aura rose again. They were like blood-red lightning, constantly twining around its body and flashing about. Apart from that, its originally dim eyes had also turned bloodshot at this moment. In just a blink of an eye, the aura on the gigantic ape's body had undergone a drastic change. Not only was it filled with murderous aura, but it also exuded an extremely dangerous aura. At the very least, Duan Lingtian had such a feeling. It's the intermediate grade offensive divine ability, the Three Flowers Congregation. At the same time, Duan Lingtian heard the exclamations of many Saint Lan disciples in the spectator seats. Soon after, from the exclamations of the Holy Land's disciples, he realized that Yang Wen had cast a mid-grade offensive divine ability. This offensive divine ability relied on the most basic techniques: the True Energy Consolidated Weapon, the True Energy Consolidated Beast, and the True Energy Consolidated Territory. Naturally, the Saint Origin Consolidated Weapon, the Saint Origin Consolidated Beast, and the Saint Origin Consolidated Territory were cast by Yang Wen. The intermediate grade offensive divine ability, the Three Flowers Congregation, focused on combining the three techniques before launching an attack. This offensive divine ability was one of the best among all the middle grade offensive divine abilities. Kill him. All of a sudden Yang Wen shouted. In the next moment, the gigantic ape hovering in the air above Yang Wen seemed to possess intelligence. Its blood-red eyes suddenly lit up as it stepped out obediently. Chapter 1999. Boom. The gigantic ape that was the size of a small mountain with a long spear in his hand that was shrouded in blood-red energy made a deafening sound when he took a step forward. Boom, boom, boom. Following that, the gigantic ape charged toward Duan Lingtian at a charging speed. Every step it took caused the air to explode. The series of loud noises shook the Saint Lan disciples around the death arena, causing their expressions to turn grave. It was as though the gigantic ape was stepping on their chests with every step it took. Just in time. Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes as he faced the gigantic ape that was charging toward him menacingly. In just a blink of an eye, his body began to undergo an earth-shattering transformation. Naturally, in the eyes of the Saint Lan disciples around the death arena, Duan Lingtian had only transformed into his hands and feet that were exposed outside of the Saint Lan disciple uniform. At this moment, Duan Lingtian's hands and feet had transformed into 4 dragon claws. After a few moments, the dragon scales that appeared on Duan Lingtian's skin thickened, and the Saint Lan disciple uniform on his body was torn apart. The dragon scales that shone with a cold black light finally appeared before everyone's eyes. It also allowed everyone to see Duan Lingtian, who had transformed into a dragon warrior. All of this happened in just a blink of an eye. It was so fast that everyone could not react in time. Their attention was completely attracted by Duan Lingtian's 4 dragon claws. Each of the 4 dragon claws had 9 claws that gleamed with a cold light. A humanoid dragon body with 9 claws. It was as though it was telling the people around him about his extraordinary identity. He was a 9-clawed dragon warrior. Golden crow's wings. As soon as Duan Lingtian transformed into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, a pair of wings that burned with flames shot out from his back. It appeared before everyone's eyes like a burning cloud in the sky. Whoosh! A sword appeared on the dragon claw in Duan Lingtian's right hand. Duan Lingtian. As soon as Duan Lingtian took out the sword, Yang Wen, who was standing in the distance, narrowed his eyes. His voice was filled with anger and hatred. This was because he recognized the sword in Duan Lingtian's hand. It was none other than his younger brother Yang Wu's 100 inscription Saint Sword. In the next moment, Yang Wen's face turned red as he moved his hands and feet. Meanwhile, the gigantic ape that was charging at Duan Lingtian began to follow Yang Wen's movements. Strangely, it began to synchronize with Yang Wen's movements as well. It was as if Yang Wen had taken control of the giant ape in an instant, as if it was his own arm. Die. Under the gazes of the crowd, the giant ape opened its mouth and actually uttered human words. It let out a roar of anger and hatred. It was Yang Wen's voice. At this moment, Yang Wen seemed to have possessed the body of the giant ape as he charged toward Duan Lingtian with his spear. Without warning, the crimson light in the eyes of the gigantic ape that was controlled by Yang Wen grew even more intense. At the same time, the muscles on the gigantic ape's right arm began to bulge. It was more than twice as thick as before. Whoosh! In the next moment, as the gigantic ape swung its right arm, the 30-meter-long spear in its hand seemed to have transformed into a crimson bolt of lightning that shot toward Duan Lingtian. Boom! 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 The lightning that was entwined with blood-red light was extremely thick. It was as thick as an adult's thigh. Wherever it passed, it caused space to tremble and set off waves of deafening noises. It was as if the sky was about to be pierced through by this spear. Upon seeing this, the Saint Lan's disciples, who were shocked by Duan Lingtian's transformation into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, could not help but hold their breaths. They watched intently as though they were afraid they would miss out on any exciting scene. Just in time. In the face of the gigantic ape's spear that had transformed into a bolt of lightning, the battle intent in Duan Lingtian's eyes soared. As he shouted, he tightened his grip on the 100 inscription Saint Sword in his hand. Moreover, the flames on the golden crow's wings on his back seemed to have frozen for a moment. All of a sudden, the golden crow's wings on Duan Lingtian's back suddenly flapped, and 2 balls of flame shot out instantly. It was as though a prairie fire was set ablaze as it struck the air. Boom! 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 At once, a series of deafening explosions reverberated in the air. It was so loud that it even overshadowed the commotion caused by the gigantic ape's spear that was being controlled by Yang Wen. Whoosh! As the golden crow's wings flapped violently, Duan Lingtian's entire body seemed to have transformed into a huge fireball as well. He was like a meteorite that fell from the sky and collided with the menacing giant ape. The gigantic ape's spear swept over at a very fast speed, but Duan Lingtian's speed was even faster. When Duan Lingtian's body was about to collide with the gigantic ape, the spear that was charging toward him brushed past him. As he brushed past the spear, Duan Lingtian could even hear a slight but ear-piercing sound produced by the friction between the spear and the air. Scram! The gigantic ape opened its mouth and roared. The spear in its hand swept toward Duan Lingtian, who was getting close to it. It wanted to send Duan Lingtian flying. Duan Lingtian was only 1.8 meters tall. In front of the 30-meter-long spear, he seemed extremely small. If he was hit by the spear, he would definitely be sent flying. At that time, even if he did not die or become disabled, he would definitely be severely injured. Boom! 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 At the moment when the spear in the giant ape's hand swept out, Duan Lingtian made his choice in a flash of lightning. He flapped his golden crow's wings abruptly and swept toward the body of the spear that was smashing toward him. Clang! 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 With 3 soft sounds, Duan Lingtian was already on top of the spear. His 3 sharp dragon claws were nailed to the spear, leaving only 1 dragon claw holding the 100 inscriptions sacred sword. Even though Duan Ling Tian had chosen to land on top of the spear at the fastest speed before the spear's power was fully unleashed, he still felt a violent tremor throughout his body. Even though the nine-clawed dragon warrior's strong body had neutralized the power, his internal organs were still in turmoil. Wah! Duan Ling Tian spat out a mouthful of congested blood that was half black and half red. Duan Ling Tian's face alternated between green and white. Die. Seeing that Duan Ling Tian had actually stuck to the spear so decisively, the gigantic ape opened its mouth and let out a furious roar. Then it charged toward the death arena at lightning speed. When it got close to the death arena, the spear in its hand shook and it actually smashed the death arena with the spear. Now that Duan Ling Tian was sticking to the spear, once the spear fell to the ground he would be heavily smashed into the death arena. Golden Crow's wings. Duan Ling Tian naturally would not sit still and wait for his death. When the gigantic ape raised its spear and smashed it into the death arena, he once again used his body movement divine ability to dodge to the side. Almost as soon as he dodged, the spear in the gigantic ape's hand finally smashed into the death arena. Bang! With a loud bang, a deep crack appeared on the death arena. Especially where the tip of the spear landed, it left behind a hideous gap. How powerful! The death arena is made of a special material. Even a powerhouse at the peak of the quintessential saint stage wouldn't be able to leave a mark on it. However, senior brother Yang Wen's attack actually caused a crack and a gap to appear. As expected of a powerhouse at the first form of the Saint Celestial stage, senior brother Yang Wen is really powerful. The group of Saint Lan disciples in the spectator seats finally had the chance to speak up. The moment they spoke, all of them praised Yang Wen's strength. However, Duan Ling Tian's speed isn't slow as well. That's right. He managed to dodge the spear that the gigantic ape controlled by senior brother Yang Wen shot out. Nobody below the Saint Celestial stage can compare to his speed. I've long heard that Duan Ling Tian's movement divine ability is even more powerful than the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's most treasured movement divine ability. Now that I've seen it for myself, it really lives up to its reputation. After a while, many Saint Lan disciples were amazed by the movement divine ability, the Golden Crow's wings, that Duan Ling Tian had cast. Duan Ling Tian's strength is really not bad. At the same time, even Lu Yun could not help but praise Duan Ling Tian. Brother Yun, I told you he's not simple. Lu Mu, who was sitting next to Lu Yun, raised an eyebrow. He felt proud. After all, Lu Yun did not think highly of Duan Ling Tian at all. It's too early to be happy. However, Lu Yun poured a bucket of cold water on Lu Mu. Up until now, Yang Wen has only cast one medium-grade offensive divine ability. Although his medium-grade offensive divine ability, the Three Flowers Consolidation, is already one of the best medium-grade offensive divine abilities. However, as far as I know, he has also mastered another high-grade movement divine ability. However, this high-grade movement divine ability can only be cast by his true body. The gigantic ape before us is merely a clone formed by his medium-grade offensive divine ability, the Three Flowers Consolidation. Although it's strong, it's not his true strength. Lu Yun's words hit the nail on the head. Upon hearing Lu Yun's words, even Lu Mu, who was confident in Duan Ling Tian, could not help but have a grave expression on his face. Moreover, Yang Wen is a true disciple after all. He might have some hidden techniques. Even if he doesn't, as the son of the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect, he must have something that can save his life at a critical moment. For example, a forbidden pill. Lu Yun continued to say. Earlier, he had learned about Yang Wen's other identity from the Saint Lan disciples in the spectator seats. Yang Wen was the son of Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect. Forbidden pill. Lu Mu's expression changed again when he heard Lu Yun's words. If Yang Wen, who was at the first form of the Saint Celestial stage, consumed a forbidden pill, would he not be able to raise his strength to the second form of the Saint Celestial stage in a short time? Lu Mu had reason to believe that. If Yang Wen had taken the forbidden pill from Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect, he would definitely be able to raise his strength by so much. If that's all Duan Ling Tian has, it's impossible for him to be a match for Yang Wen. However, when he asked me to pawn this bow, I could faintly feel a strong sense of confidence from him. Nie Zue, the custodian of the Palace of Death, could not help but fall into deep thought as he looked at the seemingly broken bow in his hand and Duan Ling Tian. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.